How you doing, brother?
I'm good. Yeah.
You good?
I woke up at 4:30 for surfing, so that's why I enjoyed a bit of cacao to make sure.
Yeah.
So the talk.
Fight this morning.
So beautiful to be here with all of you. And I think it's very sacred that we're 5 people. And often groups, when they expand with the Fibonacci sequence, there's the coherence is met. So 3, 5, 8, and then 12. Is it 13? And yeah, here we're gathered as brothers of light. And some of us just met today. Some of us known each other a few weeks. Some of us know each other more than a year. And it's happening. We're in this time on Earth where a lot of the things that we've all been working on in our own spaces and with other people and with other people from the tribe, from the global tribe, we're now all at that convergence point where the training continues, but it gets really solidified into grounded action now, and it's ready to manifest in the physical. And today we're gonna talk about a little bit of how that happens and what to be aware of from everything we've learned in our time and in our life, and visiting, communities and seeing things work, seeing things fail, what we've learned from all of it to bring together into what can truly enable a thriving intentional community, a thriving village environment of the future, a thriving civilization. How do we take those learnings that have worked on small scale as well, and some medium scales, and expand them into what it could even look like for a global scale of a new awakened Earth? So perhaps we could start with a short share, like from our heart, of what the awakened Earth feels like to us. How does it can either be like how a day looks like in the Earth, or how relating, or how whatever feels right, how this reality is, and it is now, right? And I think a lot of us already live it, and we're amplifying it all around. So speaking in the present is very powerful with these things too. It's an invitation. Thank you, brothers.
Yeah.
Who's inspired to kick us off?
I'm feeling very excited that like our energies together feels really good in my body. My body feels amazing. I'm feeling inspired. Like the surrounding is great. Like there's a lot of I'm feeling like I'm a rainbow shining. Like I got a lot of part of me are satisfied. So I would say like it's already there. Like spiritual masters have been saying for thousands of years, everything is already here. You just have to open your eyes and see it. Like I feel this very embodied today, right now. I'm excited about the past. A lot of mistakes have been done, and that gives me the fuel to do better. The present, we're having a lot of fun together, creating dreams. And the future is like we have everything we need to create the future we want. Like we have a perfect roadmap. We know where we've been, we know where we are, and we know where we are going. So it's like I feel this. I feel a lot of ecstatic, grounded energy inside me. And relaxed at the same time. I feel we are a gathering of powerful people, exceptional people.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Well, I feel really good being with you guys. Also, I feel a lot of admiration for a group with people who are both connected and also grounded, which feels really good for what we want to do. It actually energizes me. I was a little bit tired this morning from my sunrise surf. And yeah, I totally like Xavier when you share about like everything. It's like everything's perfect, and at the same time, we're here to make everything better. Living with that beautiful paradox and embracing it for me is like something I came here for, to enjoy, and at the same time to do what I feel is my mission. And part of it is creating beautiful, conscious, connected with nature and with the universe communities. So to me, what it looks like is a very pristine nature, drinking the water from the stream you can bathe into in the morning, and picking the fruits from the food forest, and everything's organic, and beautiful. It's truth and good communication between the people who live in the community, and yeah, a lot of activities that connect us. So I would love to wake up, go in a waterfall, drink some water from it, then go to a friend's maybe yoga class in the morning and move my body, and finish with some dancing and singing together, combining things that are great for my body, that connect me with my higher self and connect me with the other brothers and sisters in the community. And then spend the day of maybe working a bit, planting some papaya trees as we did this week with Xavier and Oliver, connecting with nature, and yeah, some more social activities. So yeah, a combination of being in nature and also creating, for example, recordings as we're doing at the moment, creating content that can inspire people. It can be artistic, playing music, and that would be that's already the kind of days I'm doing, surfing. But also I think we could go to the next level of that, do even more of that, connecting with nature, even more connecting with our bodies, even more connecting with each other, and even more connecting with God, or however you want to call it. So that would be like an image of my day, and it would look pretty much like this, also where we are. A lot of nature, beautiful bamboo, natural architecture, and abundance.
Oh,
Oh,
I resonate, of course. Surprised. I'll add a bit on the macro view, which is this reality of embodied living with spirits in ourselves, recognizing in each other as a society, in our buildings, how we design and how we grow, just doing everything with intention. That goes up also into how we make decisions individually as groups, how society organizes, that there's governance that's inclusive, and that's based on principles of nature, and that allows the best decisions to be taken for everyone, where everyone is sovereign and participating out of free will and out of empowerment and choice, freedom into the society. And that when there's something which is not going to plan or it's not working, no one's pointing fingers, everyone's taking responsibility, and everyone's showing up where they can. If something needs to be done or something is incoherent and you're the one who sees it, probably you're the one who needs to do it. If not, you're the one that can alert the right person ends up doing it. And having this systemic self-organizing intelligence that we all rely on each other, and on ourselves and on the collective field we create to actually continue manifesting and growing through us the future that's unfolding. And when we all know the rules of the game, then we don't need anyone to tell us how to play it. And when someone tries to play a different rule game, if we're all playing a board game together and someone tries to play different rules, then we'll be like, what are you doing? Like, that's not how we play this game. And we're all here because we want to play this game. So part of this is discovering the game, and I think the game's always evolving, living it together, co-creating the rules, and creating coherence in that we keep evolving and evolving into a more and more beautiful manifestation of divinity as paradise on earth. And I don't think paradise is a fixed thing. It's a constantly unfolding fractal of beauty, but it's a state of being that we can embody and be in, from this very moment, that continues to expand.
thank you. Oh,
Yeah, for me, service is important. Like the service to the other communities. Like like building things of all these beautiful ingredients, and then like give to different to the outside that needs. I don't like to say needs help, but we can put ourselves to service. That's something important. I'm ready to give, to give to my community, and if we have things done already, like put it outside. But, yeah.
Said, in general, can you try to speak a little bit louder? 'Cause sometimes it's not
Okay.
so easy for me to hear.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I really agree with all of you. All the points that each and every one of you has brought up. I would add as the fifth element here and the fifth speaker to bring in spirit and the divine intelligence to really find the time before we go into the outer world every day. If you asked me what I would do if this was the first day of the new earth in like a community protocol type day, I would be entering into the unified stellar Taurus temple with, the thousands of others who are actually coming into a unified mind first, coming into voidal divine intelligence, tapping into the void so that we can connect with our ancestors and we can connect with our future parallel selves, so we can connect with the more expanded vibrations of the benevolent aspects of our past in which we've learned lessons, and we can collapse time and time waves so that we can come back into the heart and really come into what we do in our actions once we leave that space with everyone else, that we are all in alignment. We don't even need to demand or command respect. We don't need to demand or command love. We don't need to demand or command agreement fields. We don't need to demand or command anything other than what is, because we're all on the same page. And if we can find a core geometry for the lensing of that voidal intelligence, that first birth through the void, that first spark of light through the void, that is what a true, aligned New Earth community will choose to be an example of first. And then we can translate that into the matter world, which is the other four elements: the earth, the fire, the water, and the air, and translate that into this beautiful, the spirit intelligence within the nature devas, and with the water elements, the river, the springs, how we can then lens our air with other humans and even non-physical beings to communicate. Because at the end of the day, it's about communication. Love is a word. It's about how well we're communicating. And I think that communion has to happen from that deep space with all the different participants, the good men and the good women and all the children, if they choose to show up for that unified field. And that is about coherent meditation. So that's what I would bring in to everyone else that said some amazing things here. I think it's crucial that we get into the unified heart, body, and mind. And it's first and foremost before we do anything with these amazing bodies.
Yeah. Thank you.
Feels like a beautiful reality that we live in.
Yeah.
Certainly is.
And
Yeah.
so we've all been to different realities around the world, which have managed to capture some essences of what we're just talking about. And I would love to open a first round where maybe we each take the time it takes, but let's try and keep it concise, of like one thing that has really inspired us, that we've learned in a community or in a reality that we've experienced around the world. Something which has been like, wow, that's an amazing example of how we can bring that ingredient into the soup for this beautiful reality.
Can I make a suggestion also?
Yeah.
Is maybe we do 2 minutes each, like
Yeah.
quickly, but on what's a little bit of a background. So for example, if we've seen some communities, so it brings context also for everyone? Do you think that's good?
Yeah, maybe we combine them and it's like, this is where I'm coming from, and this is the best experience that I've had, or not the best, but an experience that I had that I'd like to share right now.
So clarification, 2 minutes on like a minute on our background of like who we
A
are.
couple of minutes. Well,
Name, that kind of
more
thing.
in the especially in the community and governance context. So, for example, I don't know if Said knows that you've worked on designing Cam University. No,
No, he
So,
doesn't.
so maybe you wanna, Alex, maybe
but
you
that'd
wanna
be good
kick
to
us
know
off.
for him. For
Yeah.
example.
We can bring it.
Yeah.
Bring
Maybe
it. to
maybe you wanna kick us off with the format and
Mhm.
start with your introduction and your share, and
Yeah,
then we can
sure.
just follow suit.
Sounds great.
Sure. So I'm Alex, and I used to work in business in the Matrix, and the past 5 years of basically on my spiritual awakening, and been pretty passionate about co-creating a new world that lives more in harmony with Wayne Bali that called Trihita Karana, which is connected to nature, so how we treat nature, including animals, also connected to consciousness and to God and the spiritual part, spirit, and connected with each other. In the in the world we live in, it's perfect, but at the same time, I look at how we treat nature, animals, each other, consciousness. There's improvements to make. So for me, I want to live in places where, like, a few things that are important to me are sovereignty, because I've seen in the past few years how external forces can put pressure on my freedom, I feel. And then also health. I've seen like, for me, it's really important to treat that body as a temple, and the way we govern also. So what I found is a lot of communities. I don't have so much experience in visiting communities, but I've lived, like, the past year, we've lived together in a hotel with Oliver, and we were 10 people. And then we live more in a conscious neighborhood and got some land in Munduk. And I'm also into cryptos and really interested in decentralized organization models. So I've been following a lot of DAOs and this kind of organization that really makes sense to me. And so when it comes to building communities, I would love to create a community that has the things we talked about: connection, nature, each other, and to consciousness, which I feel quite a few communities around the world are doing, which is beautiful. Things that sometimes are missing from my observation are, well, some can be relating to health. I'm mainly fruitarian now. I really like to move my body. Health is really important to me. It really helps everything to treat that vessel as a temple, from emotions to spiritual connection to obviously physical strength. And so I would like to have this in communities as one of the pillars. And another one, so, is sovereignty. So I'm really interested in projects that are quite ambitious in terms of breaking away from the coercion of potential other systems, whether it be creating our nations, these kind of things. And the third pillar that I find is sometimes lacking from communities is also decentralization, which I think often you'd have a strong leader that creates a community, and things can fall apart more easily. Well, with the current technologies of DAOs, I think we can, and also people who have thought, okay, how can we use sacred geometry and nature's governance in our governance models to get innovative governance models? I think that's something that would be quite new.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
From everything you've spoken of, what's like one ingredient that you want to add
yeah.
to the soup that has really worked? Or
Well, so I said three. So it was the health, the ambitious sovereignty, and the governance. But if I had to pick one, it would be the decentralized governance. Well, let's say, because decentralized is a spectrum, so I don't want to put it in a box. And I know, like, there's always a degree of centralization, but let's say, yeah, really working a governance model that makes the community, like, kind of problem solving proof in a way. I feel that that's something really important. So what I've seen now, it would be like one of the best example would be Haifa DAOs and how they govern seeds. I won't go into that now, but having a combination of algorithmic and human-centric models that are designed by humans for humans, using the laws of nature, but that also use technologies such as algorithm to scale these things in an efficient manner.
It's a good one. Yeah.
I mean, that opens so many topics. Let's stick to this a bit of
Yeah.
that structure, and then we can go into many rabbit holes.
So I'm Oliver, and my background is in psychology, and then went into consciousness measurement and analysis. And really, my interest is in understanding how the molds of societies create certain behavioral outcomes in people, and how we can also understand how behavior is shaped by environment and culture, and all of these, both passive and the active sides of environment and culture, to not only unculture us from toxicity, but reculture us into divinity and to ways of relating individually and together, which support a thriving environment. So this journey is taking me to many places, and I'll add that also I have a huge interest in building a new paradigm, and I'm here for it, and I'm putting every moment I can into how we manifest a new world. But I come at it mostly from a people-centric focus, knowing that once the people have aligned in consciousness, and when the incentives of the system are aligned in the right direction, and incentives is that mold as well, that we will naturally act in the ways which is beneficial not only to the whole, but to the planets, to all life, and to spirits. Of course, we can come from all entry points. For me, the people and getting us aligned is where it all comes together. And so the experience I'd like to share relating to this is I was in the World Rainbow Gathering in Turkey in October this year. And this was my first time in the Rainbow Gathering, and it was a very beautiful experience. And every day there are cultural rituals which happen, and no one's forcing them. They're just part of the emergence and what happens. And one of those is 2 times a day, there's meals that get prepared, self-organized by people that sign up, food's self-organized, someone's focalizing that and making sure it's there, right? Helpers in the kitchen. And at some point, there's a call, and this is where culture comes in, food circle now. And then everyone who's around, they start gathering towards the main central fire. And twice a day, most of the people in the rainbow, not everyone, some people, they don't have to come, but most of the people are there holding hands for 30 minutes, singing songs together around the food that's in the middle, and creating a coherent energy field, just like you mentioned is something to do in the beginning of the day. And that energy field, and that's human coherence, and that consistency, is going to happen no matter what. And if no one focalized and everyone's getting hungry, someone's going to say, hey, why is no food happening? And we're going to go do this now. And it might be 3 hours late, but it'll still happen because people show up and take responsibility. And in that, it creates this field where everything is held and supported, and everyone is both in their sovereignty and in a unity together. So no matter what goes wrong and what happens in the rainbow, there's coherence amongst everyone, and we can solve everything together. So that's the learning I'm desiring to bring to get today is coherent fields amongst all the people of the tribe that's gathered, embracing them, creating them as part of daily culture. It holds everything. It holds the whole thing together, and it creates a vibration of love, which heals anything that actually could go wrong and brings it back into the coherent field of the whole space. And so many problems that people have then designed solutions against don't even happen in the first place. Or when they happen, they fix themselves within the system very quickly.
Self-fixing through self-organization, collective intelligence. Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you.
So I work as well, like my background is psychotherapy, very interested in human behavior. I run a center in Mexico. My mother started it 23 years ago, and I came to help 13 years ago. So we started building like a big thing, 25 people. I was like building in my same matrix, right? I was doing a lot of work. until pandemic came, we had a downsizing of 2/3 of the center. And at the beginning, it was very hard, but at the end, it was a blessing, because I realized I was building my own matrix. And we were just helping people and training people as well. We have trainings, but they go back to the system. It's a very tiny um, help, let's say, tiny seed, because it's a nice training to be aware, but they get back to the world and to all these traumas and problems. So then I went to communities. I found out Tamara, and this was groundbreaking for me. Tamara specifically was groundbreaking because of the truth. It's like a simple thing, but working with the truth, with my truth, put my truth into the middle all the time. It's fucking a challenge. It's a good challenge. So yeah, I was like working in this no help not helping participating in these forums with Tamara, and I like human behavior. I like this kind of like showing ourselves, and I just found out intimacy. I found out how we can heal ourselves in these kind of environments, and it's beautiful. Just talking about our truth. So yeah, it was inspiring for me, and yeah, yeah, I want to keep going in that path. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Oh. Hmm. Aloha Nui brothers. I'm Miracle King, and so good to be here with all of you. So for the last 25 years, since I had my awakening in this life, I have basically received a directive to really show up for this collective service to this planet and our children, to really activate and endear myself to the awakening of each soul to its fullest human potential. And that was actually off a psilocybin trip on the ocean, where I had my first of 7 near-death experiences. I've died a lot in this life, and I think all of us here can relate to dying, being reborn, going through this process. Sometimes happens every day on more of a micro scale. But I've had 7 specific pattern interrupts that have pivoted me into what it means to be a human, what it means to be a good man, what it means to actually bring forth something that's unique to our times, but also completely as simple as possible so that we can share these networks, these modular, shareable ways to a system that is, we can all agree on, is imploding right now and has been for many decades, in fact. And so I began this whole process kind of as a babe. I had no idea where I'd be led, what I would be doing. I just knew that I had to go on this journey, and it took me through 3 different walkabouts around the earth. It took me to really discover who is on the leading edge, who's on the threshold of the wave, who's like, okay, we've got some sort of answer to the world's problems and situations. And, it's obviously every single sector of society, and governance is obviously a big part of that, which is the theme of our gathering. That word is so heated, And so my travels and my journeys, led to actually coming back full circle around in 2003 to have, after 5 years of traveling and journeying and receiving this guidance to come back to Los Angeles, that's where I was, and having this whole vision of Mount Shasta, California, which is the 8th chakra of the planet. It's the first chakra it's the crown root of the planet. If you follow geomancy and follow the magnetic field, and dragon or ley lines, it represents really the codex for the blueprint of the new earth. So I was drawn there because I had a vision of the future of the year 2022 and beyond, of what is possible living in a aligned, awakened communiversity. And so that's where I first received this basically this parallel reality I left my body on a vision quest on a dry fast, traditional Native American indigenous dry fast in the Eagle Mountains in Southern California near Joshua Tree. And I went into this future time in 2003 into what was told was the year 2022. And I basically walked in an experience of what it'd be like to have full capabilities, multidimensional interfacing, and around at that time, in that moment, it was around 440 human bodies in this experience. And I got to come in as like a babe and sort of be like eyes wide open, experience what it would be like to live one day in a totally unified field, living and thriving experience. I got to walk and go into all the different types of geodesic domes. I got to see all the waterways. I got to see the living water sewage systems. I got to see the syntropic agriculture. Got to see how these Zen botanical gardens interface with how people. I mean, it was like an orchestra. It was like a dance. And all along my different walkabouts, I got to experience in the 3D places like Finhorn Foundation, Federation of Damanhur, but nothing was even close to what I felt viscerally, somatically being in that future time space. And it was almost like, am I going insane? Because this is so like another dimension, which it was. It was a future time space parallel reality, but it was being shown to me as like what is possible if humanity chooses to come back to themselves in the deepest voidal intelligence and then be able to activate these core geometries, these core connections to the elementals and to this divine spirit intelligence, and let that be the governance. And that the languaging would come through how the earth co-creates with humanity from the origin point. And from that origin point, it's really simple spiral dynamic geometry. And if we can come into that languaging before we use words, because a lot of this community I walked in, there was no words. They were all speaking literally through like telepathic photography. You can imagine like we're recording all these things right now and we're just meeting and saying, if I hadn't seen you for like 3 years, I would just like literally give you a download through this crystal here into your crystal, and you would know it within 1 minute. Everything that it is, and you get the theme of what I experienced not seeing me for 3 years. Just like that. That's how this whole communiversity worked. And so here I am, at the time, I was like 20, 25 years old. And I was just like, wow, this is phenomenal, And so my guide during that journey was Archangel Michael. And, the legions were part of this like sort of archangel architecture. It wasn't like a hierarchical situation. It was based on, I guess, hollow hierarchy would be the easiest way to describe the system of what was actually happening. And so I got to, the biggest part of this whole dance that I got to weave in and out of, to even meeting my future self and my partner and walking in our future living situation, and not even recognizing myself in the future. I had to be told that it was me in the future. To, obviously like coming into the Stellar Taurus temple and experiencing what it's like to actually be in a fully activated temple that's connected, not just to, like our temples, our religious temples, to the earth, to the sky, but also really deep into the inner earth. So that these two halves, which are not really acknowledged, even to the most leading edge beings in our reality right now, we're not acknowledging the ancient builder temples of what we actually co-created in the past. And so I got to experience that. And that's what really, I think, the ingredient that I would add to this is that the only place that I've seen that happen on the earth plane so far, and believe me, they have their own problems, but what they have done with the way that unites the people in their community, which is, I think it's close to over 1,500 citizens now, is the Federation of Damanhur. And what they chose to do, 13 of them, Falco Alberto Arardi was the visionary, who's passed on now, and he had 12 others. And they, in basically 15 years in secret incubated to create 7 temples underneath the earth in the Valkuzle Valley in north of Turin. And what they did there to be able to keep that secret, to keep that as like a womb of intelligence, because they knew the outside world, if they allowed all that information to come in too early, it would taint it. It would create what you were talking earlier, this outside forces, right, that would add their version of things. And they knew they needed to incubate in this womb for that 13 to 15 years to be able to at least get it all the way birthed. And they did it. Took a lot of effort, and a lot of commitment, and a lot of communication, and a lot of discipline, and a lot of diligence, and a lot of devotion. But that's really what this is about. So that's the ingredient of it.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Sometimes I find words a little bit limited to express everything I want to express because I very often have vision of the whole puzzle finished that encloses everything or englobes everything. So in the everything there is that vision of paradise that we all feel that is linked with love. There is also this variety. For paradise to exist, you have to compare it to something that is not paradise. Otherwise, you can't even see it. So I always have this feeling and vision of this perfect end result that we have. And I know that I've flushed my memory, jumped into this lifetime, and start playing the game in the dark with all the pieces of the puzzle all mixed together and trying to put them together. Oh, that feels good. Oh yeah, they click together, that feels good. And then on the way, I find people who are like me, trying to put the puzzle back together. And I really resonate with people who resonate on love, because love is what creates life and friendship and a lot of fun together and good moments. But there are some people who are interested in this lifetime to do other things. So I respect them. I've learned to respect them and not try to convert them. And just like, if you want to suffer, cool, go and suffer. And what I find really important is to realize that everything is divine, like we all heard. And I find it really true because if I try to convert someone who is not aligned to love, who still wants to be in suffering or in selfishness or whatever, and trying to convert them, they become resentful and they sabotage what I'm doing. So they're actually very appropriate in a certain place. So having clarity of the organization of how has to be. There is a place for the bathroom. There is a place for growing food, and the toilet and the growing food don't really mix together because when everything is at its right place, everything is harmonious, and the toilet can turn into compost later that can then turn into food later. But if we mix them together without consciousness, then they poison each other. So I've learned a lot of respect for variety, for diversity, and for clarity of what is appropriate and where, and having the discipline to know that we don't have to reinvent the wheel and do mistakes several times. That's why memory is very important. That's why some plant medicine that I've tried would make me lose my memory. I don't have that in my life anymore because I don't want to make the same mistake again and again and again and again and again. I want to be able to build up. So in this lifetime, I've tried a lot of things. I've studied Masters of Engineering. I've worked in the space industry. I've become a yogi, a meditator, full on. Each time I just choose a path and I just burn the bridge behind, sell everything, start again, full on to one path. So I've sold everything or given everything I had several times to be able to be completely free, to be fully involved with what I'm doing. So I've studied meditation, yoga, tantra, sacred sexuality, relationships, gardening, permaculture, survival in the jungle, fishing, sailing, like living no home and just living on sailing boats, and with people who like, and realizing, wow, the only thing that separates us from death is 2 millimeters of plastic. In the middle of the ocean, with that 2 millimeters of plastic breaks, then everything sinks and there's no one around. So, and the waves are bigger than the boat. So I have this realized that being welcoming and being used to the possibility of death at any moment gives me this great appreciation for life. So respecting death and respecting the process of, as you said, dying before dying on a daily basis is what makes me appreciate life a lot. So it's again diversity, knowing that there is a space where it's welcome to feel death. It's not the place where we want to sing and eat food and be with the children. It's going to be at different places because we don't want to mix them together or infect them with each other. But I believe that with this organizing, this clarity and these organizing skills that we have, and this common thread that we seem to have here, which is we are aligned to love, like I would say, high values that are on the high vibration values, and the respect that allows us to also respect the lower vibration values, but we choose love, we choose friendship, we choose integrity, we choose high quality food, we choose health, we choose clarity, meditation. This is what links us together. This is what really turns me on in this lifetime. And I believe that if we use and support each other and combine harmoniously all our unique powers, the result, the effect of this energy combined together harmoniously becomes like music, becomes like all the instrument of the orchestra becomes like music and creates an opera or creates a magnificent symphony. And my job is to find ways to harmonize and to help each other harmonize so that we create music instead of a lot of noise when instruments start to go crazy by themselves, not harmoniously with the rest. I believe that in this lifetime, like right now, thanks to communication, thanks to the immense amount of pain that we don't want anymore, which motivates us to do the thing right, we have the ability to create paradise basically anywhere on earth. Like give me a piece of desert, and with 5 of us guys, we can create a paradise. We can just dig a big hole, gather the water, plant the trees, have like solar panels, and create an oasis in the middle of Mars. We have this technology. Yeah, we don't want Mars because there's desert here already. It's not as there's already oxygen, which makes it easier. But we have the ability, if we focus properly and we respect the diversity, which is having fun, because just being focused on the mission is not enough. It's boring. So honoring all the aspects of creation, the whole rainbow, we have the ability to create anything we want. So it's about harmonizing each other. This is why the singing we did together is very powerful, because we harmonize each other on vibration level, on different vibration. And thank you for bringing the A, because it opened a lot of different than the Om, which is lower, and the A, and see the I and the U, and like this different harmonizing. And doing this on a daily basis, as you say, is very important because it's harmonizing with nature, because nature has also its vibration. And when we harmonize with nature, which has been there for millions of years, and nature was way more healthy before human arrived. So I think if we can harmonize ourselves with nature and find this harmony between nature and human and our vision of love and respect and support and creating paradise, we can create something amazing. So, thank you.
I'd love to weave a little bit here. So you talk about harmonizing with nature. In nature, at least in the way I perceive it, there's a natural dance that takes place, a natural balancing of ecosystems when it's in harmony, where awareness, I would say, is perhaps not self-realized in most fractals of nature, but unified by the way it grows. So the tree is already part of an ecosystem forest. It's already unified in a manner that it knows what to do. The uniqueness of where humans come in and where we're facing a lot of challenges on the planet now, and also challenges we get to transcend as we learn and go into these future communiversities, is that humans have a degree of individuated awareness, which gives us our own perception, our own way of acting, our own way of behaving, which can be disharmonic with the natural flow because of the influences around us, and can be brought out of coherence much more easily than the rest of nature, but also, when brought into coherence, can manifest divinity through us and have the creative will and creative power to actually to create new worlds and new realities, which is kind of the double side of that awareness and that fractal intelligence that's within us. And so, as that as kind of a context, there's many models which people have theorized as to how we can actually work together to manifest the even next level of creation on this planet. And places like Domino that came up were started by people like Falco, who was an ascended master and remembered everything from his previous times, and was able to come in with a high intelligence, make something happen, and fractal that intelligence into people around him, which he literally delivered to different people based on their acumen or their ability, certain part of his knowledge and of his reason for doing things, so they would steward that when he was not there. But then Damina has managed to grow and continue in that momentum, albeit with some problems. I think a few of us have been there, and all of us know about it. But they managed to grow with the expression of that fractal. And then you have other places like Oroville, which also had a similar initiation with an awakened being, that have grown and have evolved, but also have deteriorated and have lost some of the magic touch of why it started in the first place. And that's what can happen sometimes when you have these leadership models where it's reliant on one person. And that's what Falco managed to do quite well in Damina. But bringing this to kind of a general thing as to how do we even start things when sometimes some people and some pillars of a community are really in a deep way tapped into what can create, and then there's varying levels of awareness to surround it. There's that importance of the incubation that you mentioned, Miracle, to make sure that there's a solid foundation that builds so the building can actually build on top. But it comes back still to this fundamental question of who's making decisions, because ultimately it's creation, it's making decisions, but it's still chosen to fractalize itself through all of us. And so some models of governance have focused on experts making decisions on fields that they're able to create in a kind of holarchy, which is, this hollow hierarchy which you brought in earlier, where it's hierarchy not based on superiority, but based on function. Like the heart is higher up in hierarchy than the artery, then the vein, and then the capillary. But without certain crucial veins or arteries or something going wrong, clogging in one area, the whole thing can fail. So it's not more importance, it's just different levels of scope of which things are happening. So that's one kind of school of thought in governance, which tries to unify speciality, and it is in new paradigm thinking in what would be teal or turquoise in spiral dynamics, where we focus on the individual's capacity, allow it to emerge in the collective whole system, and come together in unity to create something collective that allows all this to take place. So there's varying levels to which the intelligence lies within individuals and within the systemic intelligence which was created by the individuals. And it's very easy for it to go wrong. And so what can ensure, or what supports the transition into a truly well-functioning, symbiotic, evolving, new paradigm, collective mind and individual expression whole system? We know it's possible. We've all tapped into it in different ways, but what can actually allow us to get there and not have it break down along the way? And maybe that involves also talking about some things which have broken down along the way in our experience. So this was quite a broad and expansive thing, but now I want to give the space that we go into more general discussion, not necessarily round table, whoever has inspiration, and that we start maybe building on each other and picking up on each other to kind of create what could be possible here.
So yeah, I'd love to, just because you mentioned Dominor, so I've been to Dominor several times, and I've actually taken groups there during an iteration of community kind of outreach and a group there, and I have a strong connection with some of the priests and priestesses in the schools, the different schools, the Oracle schools, the meditation school. I've also met Falco when he was alive, which was a very interesting connection point. But what I will talk about specifically is that when Falco passed on, I recently was there a few years ago, and they were literally praying on that particular oracle full moon for how were they going to take the information that he left and step it up to a new level of collective intelligence and self-governance, because what he left was not working. And so I was very close to, actually, before I flew out, having a meeting with one of the brothers who could have actually brought in the CLM, the Coherent Living Model, into an introductory phase, which would allow them to actually segue out of their old model into the potential of using the CLM. We missed each other by an hour, so it wasn't meant to be. But when I was at the Oracle full moon, they actually, what the Oracle came out. So what they do is they have an Oracle. I don't know if you've been for, and every moon is an Oracle, and they burn this thing, and it's a whole ceremony. And then there comes a series of sentences that makes like an intention or a mantra for the whole community for the next cycle. And the one that came out while I was there was literally like, what is the new model for governance for these new communities? That's really what it was. And I happened to be there. And so what I was saying is that his model was based on an inequality of just on a peer-to-peer basis. There was always more men than women in the board, in the council, including himself. And he never actually like brought the energy to empower the equality that needs to happen as an exemplification for future generations, right? For children, I talked about this before, because they're looking at what you do, not what you say. So the idea is that every time they would go around to another, re-election of their core council, of their governing council, it'd always be lensed towards the man selecting another man, and there was always either 5 men and 2 women, or 4 men and 3 women, or it was always for years, and they never once had an equal amount or more women than men. And so when I had these conversations with them, just purely on that level, I just asked them, so how's your board been since Falco passed? It's been a few years. And he said, it's always been like this, it's been like this, it's been like this. I'm like, well, maybe that fundamental change will spin the wheel, spin the geometry in a new manner, where you're going to have an exemplification of equal value philosophy and gender equanimity. And this is the one thing in our councils and our boards, across the board, whether it's just in the matrix corporate world, governance, within the Western worlds especially, but all that kind of fiat currency centralized world, including what I've seen in the DAOs and the decentralized aspects that have been coming strong in the last 5 to 6 years. There's also a strong leveraging towards the masterhood. So I'd love to just, bring up, this is one thing that I think is really crucial to how we really intended to kind of spark the university through the Coherent Living Model, or CLM, was how can we bring a model out that takes all these aspects that we're already using, but adds in ones that are missing, so that we can actually get into this resonance and this harmony, right? Without having to play music or om or do a mantra, but just from purely us saying, yes, this is what we choose to use as our core languaging. That's going to be based on the 6 different sheaths, or the 6 different states of each human being at the table being and resonating at. And so that is a state of seeing, it is a state of being, that is a state of knowing, that is a state of feeling, that is a state of sensing or using the intuition, and also a sense of doing, right? Taking action. So these 6 sheaths, or these 6 states of being, are so crucial to us as individuals, and to actually create a geometric patterning around the hexagon, around the 6-pointed star, around this particular geometry. So when you have these 6 states all inclusive, then you're not leaving parts out. which is what I've seen in the governance, not just in Dominor, but it was also in Finhorn. It was also in many other these places you're talking about, like Oroville, and what I've seen in a lot of other micro communities over the last 25 years. Yeah.
So you haven't found any that is using like a proper
Not yet.
governance.
No, I believe there are some DAOs that have attempted to do that, but most of them are not living in embodied somatic intelligence community. They're living off screens in different countries, and they're creating the element of the air, and they're creating the ether, but they're not physically engaged with each other daily. You know, it's either on like in-house Zoom software, or all these different things that are part of the architecture of the decentralized narrative, which I do feel it has an important it is an important ingredient. I don't think it's going to be all end all. I think it's going to last maybe till 2030, and then we're going to have to take another leap. I feel like the decentralized narrative is a bridge. It's a languaging bridge right now to get as many people that can really somehow embrace the concepts of some of these, because it can be very, it can be very convoluted. It can be for most people, even like spiritual conscious people that don't know about the decentralized aspect. It can be a lot. It's like learning a new language, and not a lot of people are going to get it. But those that are getting it, it's going to form a communication transitory bridge towards helping a lot of other people move towards, it's great. We can just, be in the all one and see where we need to fill the voids. But when it comes then scaling it on a modulated level, this is difficult to do. So it's being able to find commonality. I feel it's a bridging, but I don't think it's the be all end all. Like I said before, I feel like it's going to be a new unified way of embodying decentralization, which will bring centralization back into the forefront and make it omni.
Omni-central.
Yeah.
There's something I want to bring in here, which is relating to spiral dynamics system of consciousness, is that there's a risk of being in green consciousness and thinking everyone is the same. And there's a lot of people who design governance structures, for example, even voting is a good example. One person, one vote, and everyone votes about everything, which is actually based on at least the model of spiral dynamics, in my view, is not higher consciousness. It's diminishing of the fractal beauty and the uniqueness and the individuality of each individual's expression, and how they can bring much greater insight into things which their soul has chosen to embody and incarnate and be here to execute and learn throughout 20 years. Maybe they have a little bit more insight about that topic than someone who just finds it kind of interesting since 2 weeks. It doesn't mean that not everyone's welcome to the table. It means that we need a system which is able to honor the individual uniqueness of each person and what they can bring, and not assume everyone should be the same and know the same and make decisions all together about everything. And that's when we jump from green consciousness and spiraling to teal, is the honoring of the uniqueness. It goes from everyone the same into everyone unique, into teal or yellow, depending on what system's calling it. And there's when we celebrate everyone and everyone's ability. Like, I shouldn't be making decisions about the garden if we have Xavier at the table, who has a lot of experience in permaculture, but I can still show up and plant. But when it comes to decisions where we're going to plant the papayas, Xavier's going to make those calls, right? And that type of intelligence, then once it evolves into everyone feeling secure and honored, mutually honored in their individuality, we can go into the next level of tier 2 consciousness, which is turquoise, which is when we go from the individual into the collective field that is created and holding all of us, a bit like the field I felt in the rainbow that I mentioned earlier, where we're all uniquely doing our things, but as a whole, we also come together and are able to make decisions together that impact everyone. And that interplay is really important. And I brought this up originally because I'm a huge believer in balance, masculine, feminine, gender equanimity, and, and these things. And I'm aware of the risk of also assuming that we're the same. And there are natural spreads and distributions where certain people and also certain energies, more masculine focus, are going to be more the go-to for that type of task or that type of activity, and more feminine focus to go to for that a certain task and activity. And doesn't mean more men or more women, right? We all have the masculine, feminine within us. There's just natural spread, and it's not all the same. And so, where is the balance between honoring each other's, honoring the masculine for what it is, honoring the feminine for what it is, but also unifying it and making sure each is heard and used in all different spaces. I don't know the balance, but I know that it needs to be there.
What I'm feeling for governance is that for the more core layers, it could be a good idea to implement a more strict balance of gender. But then within certain domains, then we could have, like, we wouldn't make it, oh, it has to be balanced for each. So for example, if we find out that permaculture is something that attracts way more men, then it could make sense to me to have a governance there that is mainly men. And same for if it's a council, for example, and same if we have things that attract more women. But then in the overall core governance, make sure there is that balance.
I agree with that, but that would be for an aligned community.
Mm-hmm.
When you bring the diversity into the equation, you're looking at a constant inner evolutionary pattern. You're looking at how can I actually be both the student and the teacher at the same time? Maybe it's an in-breath and an out-breath. Maybe it's in a different thematic living pod theme or department. But you're constantly evolving, you're constantly learning. So that's where the stewardship, the collective stewardship happens. But imagine that every single thing that we're talking about right now, whether it's like permaculture, syntropic agriculture, whether it's like the actual governing model, whether it's finance, decentralization, how do we exchange goods and resources in service, or it's even like, okay, what about plant medicine and actually helping people move through hospicing a dying culture when someone comes in that's like a Rothschild banker and it's like has an awakening and it's got $10 billion to fund into the project, but realizes he needs help, So you got to take him through this ritual of rites of passage. That's a whole other theme. All of it, and then you have the ones that are dying, right? We could have some of our elders like, hey, I'm on board with you guys. I'm not going to die in that hospital in the middle of Los Angeles or London or Paris or whatever. Like, I'm connected to this. Can I give my wisdom? But I only got like a year left, So there's an aspect of tribal culture, which is what we find in different indigenous societies, which are super crucial to us. Not like kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater because all this new. It's actually what we're really doing is not new. It's just super, super ancient. And it's just coming out and bringing that with a different flavor for this time to be able to organically bring it together. And I think that the concept of using something like geometry as the core languaging that allows us to then fall into our strengths. So you fall into what you most love to share and what is so easily teachable for you.
Yeah.
And then the other person, that's their weakness, or they're just not strong in that. So all of a sudden they become a student. And then all of a sudden you're learning about all of these. And before you know it, you're having this holistic, thriving edutainment, educational experience happening, not like a top-down K through 12. And then we all went to university and college. But this is also a crucial part of society. Is like, how are we laying the groundwork for future generations? That's why our motto is 1,000 generations ahead. Because if we're not looking that far into the timeline, seven generations isn't enough. There's too much coming around right now with artificial intelligence, which we're just the very beginning stages of, that we have to bring the bioorganic intelligence with these geometric models to reshape human interevolutionary patterns so that we can actually bring forth what's possible with things that we use daily. You know, when we interact with the ocean, or we go out and plant seeds in the land, or even when we get on the computer and we have our calls, all of these things have a particular role within the governance on a day-to-day operation of a living, breathing, aligned community or a CLN-based university. Because without acknowledging all that depth, then we're actually really doing a disservice to our own evolution. We're not actually saying, okay, we acknowledge and commit and devote ourselves to the depth, and we can also like do everything, you know, that we need to do on a day-to-day. And then that allows that collective intelligence and collective potential future timelines to come into existence, because we're all operating from depth.
And you bring up something very interesting here, which is being in this environment where everyone's learning from each other and teaching, but also receiving. There's something which is invisible here, which is culture. How is the culture of how we actually interact and how we relate and how we communicate? That is very important, because coming from a Western world that we've come from, there's a lot of patterning, which is, I want to share my opinion about this. I want to jump in, and people often feel the need to prove themselves through expressing and jumping into something that maybe they have no idea about, but just because they have some type of trauma or complex that they need to prove themselves. And I've been subject to this, maybe we all have been subject to this. And there's a huge process of deculturation which needs to take place, and reculturation. That when someone is sharing about something that they really understand and really know about, right, that others are in a receiving space and able to really take it in and ask questions, and that we all get to be the teachers and all get to be the students, and that we get to also acknowledge when someone's jumping in an unhealthy manner and be like, hey, actually would really like to listen to this person. And it comes back to the saying which I find very humorous in some ways, which is that culture eats governance for breakfast. I'm a big governance fan. I love talking about governance models. But when governance breaks down, and it can happen, culture is what remains. How we relate and how we solve problems beyond the governance, and how we come together and have these cultural exchanges is what is actually, in my opinion, the glue behind the governance. And they feed into each other and they become a torus, but they're both super important. So, you know, Skip, thanks for joining us here today. And actually, it's kind of a good timing, because you've managed to create very, very powerful culture in your community organization. I mean, you have the company, but it's family. And that's what everyone who comes to your events says, you know, like, whoa, you're creating a family here. So maybe we could jump into now some keys, and I'd love if you'd kick us off, Skip, of what are some of the things which actually create that family vibe where we are self-growing and growing all together, and not competing against each other to get out there, but building something together that keeps thriving.
Amazing. So, hi everyone. I think that if we take it out and we zoom out on whatever environment, the environment's going to shape whatever's in it. The environment wins every single time. We don't have a standing. We're not going to win against nature. Nature's been here for billions of years before humans even stepped foot on this planet. So if we're looking to create a new environment, we've got to understand within that hub, within this vortex or this culture, as you talk about, what do you want in it? And there's only one thing that needs to be in it, and it's super simple. And when it's super simple, there's clarity. When there's clarity, there's power. Without the power, you can lose control of how you might have the best intentions, but then it takes one little wrong seed to start growing. And before you know it, that one seed is spreading around and it's spoiling everything else. And the way that I built our organization, we built 2 7-figure companies in lockdown with zero investment, all organically grown, but it's grown at, I wouldn't say light speed, but it's growing not too fast where people are breaking down, but fast enough so that there's a bit of pain, And it's just like pain from doing a workout. You know, when you started working out again, you would have felt physical pain. But did you go, oh God, I'm feeling some pain now, I must stop? So no, I'm feeling freaking pain. I'm working this body now. And then when you sleep, you regenerate. Now, that pain can be accepted when, and it comes down to this one simple thing. If it's not a heart-driven energy, it's going to be toxic. Why? Because we can't trust the mind anymore. We now know, you know, with the Stocko series, that we've got the studies, and we've got 25 of our planet's top gurus, and extracting all this information from them, we now know that 90%, and this is according to the psychological model, so there have been big studies on this, 90% of people's thoughts in the modern world are negative. So it doesn't matter whether you're rich, poor, fat, thin, tall, small, black, white, whatever you are, if 90% of these toxic thoughts are coming through the mind, then how do you create from that place? You can't, because it's going to be toxic. So when we bring it down to this heartfelt energy, you can go with tough love, you can go with support, you can go with passion, you can go with everything that's needed to be able to build a culture, because you're dealing with different personalities which are shaping their personal realities. So what we've got to do is bring in a heartfelt energy so that everyone is of a group consciousness. And the only way you can do that is everybody has to be clear on what the vision is. If they're not clear on the vision, if they're not supporting the vision, they're not right for that type of environment, which is okay, because there's billions of people on the planet all experimenting with human consciousness. But because we know the level that human consciousness is playing out at the moment is actually now destructive on life, people like us are getting together, people like us are dedicating our lives to raising conscious levels on the planet. And I just made it simple. If anyone's in our company and they're not bringing a heartfelt energy, you can go and ask them a question. Is this head energy or heartfelt energy? And if they respond like this, heartfelt energy, they're full of shit. And it doesn't mean that you're going to judge them and you're going to curse them, but what it means is that, right, come on, let's be real. Come on, where's this energy coming from? Because you've got to be able to support people when they fall, when they bite back, because that's the level of human emotions that we're dealing with. And when you've got a family, what do? You weather all the storms together. But there's got to be a common bond. Now, the challenge is, in most families, the common bond between blood isn't strong enough anymore. So what we're seeing is communities like this, what you're growing, where you're not blood related, but you still feel like family.
Soul related. Soul connection.
Boom. That's it.
Is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you've got to bring that soul energy into the physical. And that's why you've got to have the vision within this physical reality that everybody's in alignment with. Because otherwise, some of the energy is going to flow in a certain direction, but then there's going to be other energies branching off and it's going to be pulling. Whereas if they're branching off, but they're branching off to serve the greater good, you support them branching off. It's just like a tree growing another branch.
Yeah.
But it's all rooted to the same stuff, and which is the soul connection.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a great point, because I'm sure some of you can relate. I've done thousands of events in the last 25 years, and whether they're symposiums, whether they're retreats, whether they're trainings, and you're bringing all these different people together in a 5-star venue, in a yoga studio, in a shala, or whatever it is. They're all staying on site. They all have different cultural belief systems. They all have different ideologies, but they're coming for breath or yoga or plant medicine or whatever the theme is, to have a massive pattern interrupt in their lives, because they know it's not working for them back where they are in LA or New York or London or Rome or wherever it is. And there's a point where it's what Skip was saying, is you bring that passionate heart energy and you galvanize the connection so that there's a trust field and there's a safety net. And then all of a sudden the scaffolding of the mind and all the architecture that's connected to the mind, that's not connected to the heart, not connected to a true radiant healthy body, just starts falling away. And once you get to a certain level of this torsion field that starts to, after a matter of 3, 5, I've done 2 to 3 week events, there's a point where it just hits like the unified field or the voidal intelligence or the 0 point, where all the roles go out the door. And whatever is needed, what you were talking about, the rainbow gathering, I mean, that's a huge gathering. I've been to rainbow gatherings before a long time ago. But on a micro scale, and some of our intentions are like, how do we create communiversity for 2 weeks together? Okay, well, everyone wants to be part of this new type of educational aligned community. How are we going to do this together in 2 weeks? you know, with all these ideas and brilliant minds and great hearts and human resources and, you know, people who are embodied yogis and yoginis, people who are super into finance and super into technology, and bringing like people who are like total opposites on the spectrum culturally as well. How do we demystify that, bring that together so there's some kind of acknowledgement of commitment to just 2 weeks? And then also like spin the dreidel. So all of a sudden, boom, you have this like jewel flowering. And all those roles, like the people who are super technology based are like cooking in the kitchen. Because that's what they do as their hobby back at home when they're not 99% like masterminding something. That's what they do with their heart. It's all of a sudden like those heart spiral dynamics you were talking about. And it's like all of a sudden, you don't need a coherent living model. The coherent living model is the system that helps people in their minds to understand and understand why we're coming together. And then the model disappears. And then all of a sudden, there are no words, there are no needs of words. It's actually everyone's just taking this like orchestrated action where everyone's playing their own pure note and they got their own instrument. I'm not talking about a physical instrument. It's coming from within, and it starts with the heart. It starts with a torsion of spirit, heart, intelligence, and the body just operates in a field of unity. And that's where thriving. I think that feeling we've all had here in moments in all of our offerings, and or maybe we've been part of other people's offerings. But that is what we're really looking for right now. That's what we want to actualize. But to be able to expand that particular pivotal, unified feeling so that it never goes away. Yeah, it never goes away. So that's, I mean, never say never, right? But we're saying never say never, but at least for a longer period than just like 2 weeks, a longer period than even just like 1 month,
A month of the rain.
or even 3 days, or your 7-day traditional yogi retreat, or your 21-day training. It's like, how do we expand that with the right configuration of souls? That's really what this is about, because you can bring billions of dollars on the table, you can have thousands of acres and hectares, but if you don't have the right geometry and configuration of souls, you got nada. Yeah. And that's what I've learned. It took me a long time to learn that, because I thought it was about the money first. I thought it was about having the right environment with the water and the waterfall, you know, all the things, the soil. It's like what Xavier was saying earlier. It's like, take the right people. We can go to fucking Mars and we can create paradise, you know, in the desert, because we have the right souls. We have the right configuration of intelligences who are committed, who love being there. And they're like, yeah, give us whatever you got, environment, give us whatever you need. And we are going to be resilient enough to fucking kick ass and do this. And when you ask me, have I found that yet? No, I have not. And I've been doing this for 25 years. I've had small iterations of it, but not at the level that I have already seen in my future mental rehearsals. Every day I walk into the university. Every day in meditation I walk. When we laid this whole thing out, I do that every day, and I'm there. And you know, the only person that's been able to come in to my lucid state and actually ask me, give me the tour, is Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's the only person who's been able to interface and come into my dream time and be like, bro, I'm part of this. Like, give me the tour of Communiversity. So, I mean, that just tells you, like, it's the level of coherence. It's the level of inner work. He's done a lot of inner work, and it's a lot. I mean, he's got a huge heart, and he's got a very awakened brain. And so, but the next step is, how can we do that with a unified brain, a unified awakened heart, a very open collective heart that's relaxed and available and able to receive, and do that as a unit principle of consciousness, which takes, that's what gets me out of bed. That's what excites me. And even if I have to do that alone every day, or, you know, maybe with a couple people, the desire is to do this with thousands.
Well, I got something for you then. Because when you shared about this, there's an event in Bali in April, and we'll spend a whole month together with a bit more than 100 people like us coming from all around the world, which also is really into the sovereignty part I was talking about and the decentralized DAO part. And while you were talking about spending at least 2 weeks, I was I wanted to renew my invitation to you and to everyone here on the table and to everyone who listen if we choose to publish it. That I think that's happening in April in Bali, and I also think Joe Dispenza would be amazing to have too. So that would be a beautiful manifestation. But yeah, there's an event
into the collective hologram.
yeah.
Anything is possible.
There's that happening. And when you talked about spending enough time, I think that's super important. I've actually, that project, I've tried something similar about more than a year ago, which was to do like, it was called the Lightleaders Mastermind, and to become the Lightleaders DAO when the technology was ready. But actually working online, even if we were very aligned and we wanted the same things, never connected the heart enough. Well, spending, as you said, at least 2 weeks, maybe in that case, a whole month together doing manifestation exercises like conversations like we're having right now, plus heart-centered experiences and celebrations to connect our hearts, plus also actually it's an incubator, so actually creating together is like super powerful. And I just wanted to talk about it because I can't wait to be there, and I think it's going to be a huge
It's here happening
milestone.
right now, actually. It's not
Yeah.
in 2 months. It's happening right now. The singularity is happening right now. But yeah,
Yeah,
in the
it's
future
true.
time, absolutely.
Yeah.
If it's where I'm supposed to be and pop into the hologram, yeah.
So there's something I want to expand on here, which is there have been experiments, and this will be another one of them, who have managed to consolidate this type of consciousness over a couple of weeks or a month. Like in the Rainbow Gathering, it's one lunar cycle, and you have that unified field that's created. But beyond that, there's dysfunction which starts to happen in the system, which has prevented it, at least in what I've seen, from actually maintaining that level of unified coherence into an actual civilizational model, which can go on indefinitely into the future. You know, things in the Rainbow Gathering, as beautiful as that unified field is, there's health problems which start to happen because, you know, people are around fires every day, all day, sharing cups and not having strong immunity and eating glutinous food. And no judgment there. It's amazing for the space that's being held, but it's not systemically replicatable. Winter comes and there's no preparation. Food is being bought from the outside, you know, with the money from the magic hat that's going out to buy it. Great, it works for time, but there's no sustainable model. What if the outside food supply stops? Well, the whole thing's fucked immediately, right? So building
It's the same with
something.
like burning then.
Exactly. Yeah. So how do we build that coherent field while also honoring that within that field there's little fractals like sustainable food systems, sustainable energy systems, sustainable social system, cultural system, growth system, educations, like that need to actually grow themselves and be self-sustaining over time to actually create something long-lasting. And even within that, there can be dysfunction which happens, and we need a self-adaptive cultural environment which allows failure to be there, not see it as failure, see it as learning, and there's another opportunity to refine the system altogether.
And also,
get
if
to
I
that
can
level.
interject,
It's-
also, so you talked about the health and also on the sovereignty side. So I don't think Rainbow Gathering has a way to deal with how can I get to the next Rainbow Gathering and not have to show the kind of papers that I think I wouldn't want to show, whether it be like a job or some nationality thing or being sprayed in the plane or these kind of things,
Right.
which are also important. And I feel things that we want to tackle and where the governance can also.
So one of the things that when I first had the vision in 2003 of Communiversity and walked in it when I went into the year 2022 back in 2003 and walked in it, you know, future forecast, mental rehearsal, came back to my body. It took us literally almost about 6.5, 7 years right before the housing collapse in 2008 to finally incubate and get funding to incubate for 6 months. And we had 3 men and 3 women, which was enough to actually, like I said, activate the model and to live together and to basically write a 330-page plan. That's what we did. We did from nothing, from scratch, and be able to live together, thrive together, do the practices, cook meals together, deal with all our shit, you know, process that. And come up with something, you know. Yeah, this concept of like community, this concept of the new earth. What does it mean? What does it look like? You know, what are our day-to-day operations look like? What are we doing? You know, and all of these things, you know, taught us so much about not just living together. I mean, we could have just lived together and did yoga or breath work and just, you know, went out and did our jobs and then come back. And but the intention was we're writing a plan. We're going to write a plan that can be scalable, modular, and go to many other communities that want to endorse the same geometric languaging, which is the CLM, and they can create their own version of communities where they have an aligned community that's resilient. That's key, right? And then they have this desire to educate the next generation. Because if we're only thinking about ourselves, and even if you don't have children, maybe one day all of us here, I mean, maybe some of us have children. I'm going to have children. You've had children.
We
I don't
might
know about you guys.
we might reincarnate too.
Or you might reincarnate. But we have to think about, you know, this, you know, furthering the genetic expression of bioorganic intelligence, you know, and I think the human race right now is at a threshold. It's at a crux right now of choice points for the collective genome of what it means to be a human being. And it's so crucial right now that we think about future generations and what we are laying the breadcrumbs to their version of what aligned community will be, what systems, governance, exchange of goods and services, currency, you know, harmonic resonance, you know, day-to-day operations. What does that look like? What is their systems of K through 12 university college look like? Or is that model not even working? I can tell you right now, for most of us here who've been through that, that shit doesn't work.
Yeah.
In fact, it's just programming that you got to spend years
Cluttering.
delayering and fucking, you know, taking all the masks of all those, you know, patterns out. So, and reveal what it is that we really are truly here for. And
So to build on this, I think this is what we're all here gathered to do together, and that's why we're discussing here today, is to create a live, living university, you know, community environment where we allow that universal field to be created. We create a strong foundation. We allow it to grow. We allow it to be fractalized. We test the governance models. We see what fails. We improve. And all of that is possible now because of the state of harmonic convergence that consciousness is coming into. It wasn't possible in previous iterations. It was possible to try it, to learn from it, to make the mistakes that needed, that we're now standing on the shoulders of. And that even what we're doing now will once be something we're standing on the shoulders of. And that's that constant iterative process of how we get to the next level and to the next level. And I think now truly we're at that stage where it can happen in a larger, let's say, city-sized civilizational environments of conscious community that grows out of a nucleus. And that nucleus is so important that the culture is there because it creates these pillars of the community, these pillars of everything we're working on together. And in the beginning, if one pillar breaks, the whole structure can collapse, right? But as you grow pillars and you grow culture that's healthy and you grow a structural membrane, then some things can break and the whole thing doesn't collapse. And people can come together and figure out what's needed to make sure it gets fixed and the whole thing keeps evolving. So at the stage we're at now, to ground this into the present, you know, what are some keys which keep all of the pillars strong, right? And what are some principles, what are some things we've learned along the way to keep it strong so that it doesn't fail in the early stage and can go on to getting to slightly bigger problems and bigger challenges and bigger opportunities to solve, so that we come into that coherence at larger and larger levels. But it starts with the right now, and it starts with what allows it to be strong from the beginning.
yeah.
If we look at so the way that we put these two companies is, to me, the corporate model's broken because there's no heart and soul in it. Makes money, but it also makes illness. It makes disconnection. It makes a lot of toxic stuff, which is just driven for ultimately power and greed. And when I was say, okay, well, you want us to build like these, you know, these big companies, how are we going to do it? And it was real simple, that this thing that we all live in is the universe reshaped in physical form. With all of the intelligence that we can connect to anything in our universe. And this is the miracle that we're living in. And look at the structure of it. It started with light body, something that's non-physical. So we start with the soul. And the soul breathes where? What's the first thing that starts life in you? There's no life in you until your heart starts beating. So we still don't know what got our heart beating for the first time in our mother's womb. So there's an intelligence that we can tap into. We don't have to figure this out. What we have to do is open up to allow it to breathe through us. So if we look at the heart, without the heart, none of this stuff works. The eyes don't work, the nose doesn't work, the smells don't work, the senses don't work, the bones don't work, the muscles don't work, the ligaments don't work, the blood doesn't work. None of it works unless that heart is beating. Now, if you're looking at growing out these civilizations or these communities, you've got to understand what is the heartbeat. And the heartbeat is the people working together in harmony. Because without that harmony, without being heart driven, the mind will take over. People want to be right. People want to have a certain say. The ego wants to be heard. And that's all head stuff. Whereas when we understand what is the heartbeat, and this is where, and we're doing this with our stuff, where certain key people have to be in charge of certain key things. Because otherwise, it's a fuck fight. Seriously, if you just leave it for the thing to grow itself organically, it will never happen, because you're dealing with too many people who are at different levels of consciousness, and you can go and give responsibility. It's like putting a child in the driving seat of an aeroplane. They're going to crash and burn, no matter who they are. So there has to be a certain level of maturity. There has to be a certain level of training. There has to be a certain level of discipline. There's got to be a certain amount of training to be able to be responsible for what the bigger vision is. And this is where I truly believe that you either need a council, or you need a soundboard, or a collective a group of conscious people that all have a say. Because then if one of them breaks, that person's out and the next one's in. And you've got to look at those people like either an organ. So say a liver breaks down. We're now intelligent enough to be able to change a liver, to be able to change a lung, to be able to change a kidney, to be able to change a heart. They're even now getting ready to change brains. I think they're actually already doing it. So what it means is you can take one thing out and put something new in. So if one person is screwing up and the collective is saying, you know what, this person's so derailed, we can't pull them back in. We're going to have to let them go. They're going to have to go and do their own thing, because we don't want them poisoning the bigger thing. Now, the beautiful thing is we know the environment's going to shape. So you know the experiment that I've just done. Now, with all that stuff that was going on here, look how fast this is rebuilding. Why? Because of the environment. So what it means is when there is that crash, when there is that breakdown, because of the collective consciousness, things can regrow super, super fast. It's just like a tree being struck by lightning. That tree's done. Guess what? Plant another one, boom, it starts to grow again if the soil's good. So the way that you do it is that you have to have that heartfelt connection, which is done on what? 2 pillars: trust and respect. If there isn't trust and respect in the information, in the energies that we're sharing, at some level that relationship's going to break down. When you've got the trust and respect and you've got the common vision, that's when we can talk, right, okay, if we build this, what are the pros and cons if we do this? If we put time and effort into this, what are the pros and cons that are going to build this? Now, because I truly believe that we can all be guided by a high form of intelligence that created life, and I'm talking about all life, everything from insects to animals to birds to everything that's underwater to us. What is needed is to be able to plug into that high form of intelligence, but to have a clear vision. Because as soon as you've got that clear vision, every single thing that's going to get created, whether you're creating all the food sources that you're talking about, so that this whole thing can be off grid and it can all be self-sufficient, guess what? The ideas will come. And it's like, if we look at technology now, we couldn't have imagined what we're doing. The average person couldn't have imagined what we're doing 50 years ago. And now it's common practice. So what's happened? The higher form of intelligence started to breathe through us. And the more open we are to it, the ones that aren't conscious are going to hate it. Why? Because people don't like change. But when there's that collective council of highly evolved beings, and they're understanding, we're going in this direction, right? This new technology, this new idea, this process, this vision, this irrigation system that we want to create, this farming system we want to create, whatever it is it in alignment with the bigger vision? As soon as you've got that yes, then you get everybody's energy behind it, everybody's love behind it, and that force is unshakable.
Thank you.
I really love what you said and what's been said. And what's been coming to me is that I have visited a lot of communities. It's been my passion for 20 years. And I've seen what works and what doesn't work. And I've also an engineering mind, so I can reverse engineer and see where, that dream ran its course and failed because of that little factor here. That just had like a domino effect, which at the end feel like, oh yeah, that's amazing dream from 20 years ago turned into an average half-failed community like already or like that. And what's really important, plus my experimentation, because for 10 years I have experimented welcoming people on the land and seeing what works, what doesn't work, is the human factor, that intelligence needs variety and that human beings change and that we are not robots. And that the same person in 1 year will have completely different emotions, or a different boyfriend, or a different girlfriend, or suddenly be pregnant and have very different needs than they had a year before. And what's really important is to give, because of this needing variety, enough space so that people can experience themselves in an accelerated way, where when they experience themselves in an accelerated way, like a flight simulation, for example, they can learn the laws of nature or re-experience or relive the evolution of nature without having to wait 10 or 20 or 50 million years, because nature will teach you. Like someone in the ego, you send them for 2 weeks in the mountain or sailing in the Bahamas, they're going to learn very fast from nature what happens. But when we have what I've seen failing in communities is people having very strong opinion, very strong ideas, and they might be an expert in their field of expertise, but for the rest, they are not so in line with nature. And that's why it starts to fail. But if there is a space and there's a council, like you said, where there is the specialist in permaculture and there is a specialist in war-related post-traumatic syndrome trauma, because you might have a very amazing leader, but if he goes crazy when there's loud noises because his mother was raised under the bombs, and he doesn't know about it because it's subconscious. We need places where people can experience accelerated remembering so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel each time. And that's very important. So when, like you said, when someone is out of line and doesn't fit the plan anymore because whatever happened in his consciousness is really being triggered, is not in line with the common vision anymore, he needs to be able to go and experience himself into an accelerated way so that he can remember. So if he's showered with subconscious selfishness, survival need, I need my own house, I need my own this, I need my own that, which is fear-based because he's in scarcity, if he can experience a place in the community or in the place where he can experience being, I don't know if you probably have experienced those like angel walk. You know, this process, this workshop, there's an angel walk. And then everybody just receive like 50 or 100 or 200, I love you, you're amazing, I love you, you're amazing, being touched, being loved, and how it affects the whole energy field. Like you take a photo of the group before, after an hour of angel walk, where everybody goes through it and give and receive. What's the process? What do they do? Angel walk. It's a rainbow.
Like you walk through
you make a tunnel
and people are appreciating you as you walk, and then eventually it's your turn to walk because the tunnel's like.
So it's a tourist field.
Amazing, right?
So you walk through it and you have 200 people telling you, you're amazing, I love you, you're so beautiful, I love you. And they touch you. And when you're at the end, you become part of the tunnel, and the tunnel just like, it's like a tourist field. And you do that for an hour. It's unbelievable, the effect, the healing effect of it. Yeah. So having this principle into a community where someone gets suddenly angry for whatever reason, and we don't even have to analyze and say, oh, you are out of line, you're angry each time you come to the meetings or whatever. Go and experience yourself in the way that will heal you in an accelerated way, so you don't have to find yourself destroying the community and then alone, and then going after that, going for walk about in the mountain and realize, oh shit, I've destroyed that community because I was replaying my childhood trauma or something like that. So learning from other communities what is working, what is not working. Like you heard of those tribes in Africa where, similar to the angel walk, when someone is out of line, instead of excommunicating them, they put them in the center and they tell, you're amazing, I love you.
They sing their song,
the song
of their soul.
Yeah. So so we would have like a column, what works, problem, what works in this tribe. Same problem, what works in that tribe, what works in the Inuit, what works with the Maasai in Africa. And we have, what can we do? And then when I have a problem, I go and see that boss. Oh yeah, I have this problem. And I can try it out.
Having a list is one thing, but having the culture to actually say one of our core values is returning to ourselves. One of our core values is listening to nature and regenerating and healing, which are the other things you said, going to that space where you can hear, where you can listen, get taught.
Yeah.
Like that needs to be ingrained, not just that it's something that's nice and on the wall, but that it's expected. And that when someone's out of alignment, that even themselves, others don't need to tell them, hey, you need to go spend some time in nature, because then that creates, some type of patronizing effect sometimes. But actually they even realize, oh, whoa, actually, why am I acting like this? I'm going to go to the meditation area and spend half a day there and see what's actually happening. That needs to be so deep, at least in a core number of people, that when someone comes in from the outside and they don't understand this culture yet, that everyone's already embodying it so much that if something's out of alignment with them, they fit to the culture. And that's when the culture reaches a stage of maturity that's high enough that it starts to cohere everything that comes in. And there's a very beautiful example of how this happened to me when I was in the Rainbow Gathering, is I wanted to bring my car and have my cozy area in an area in nature where I could keep myself dry. And a sister from the Rainbow, so sister was, how you relate to another person, she came over and said, hey, we're not allowed to, or we've chosen altogether not to have cars in these areas because we want to be fully connected to nature. Would you be okay with you if you move it? And I said, okay, yeah, this is annoying because it's my convenience and my comfort and my zone of freedom that I wanted to have right here. But, okay, she's right. And this is a community space. And she asked me nicely. Now, she wasn't a chosen member of police or coherence or needing to enforce something. She was a regular member of the environment that was in that culture who come and said that to me. So what I observed in myself was, okay, I need to either I'm going to go into the ego of my thing, I'm going to adapt myself to the collective field. And I chose to adapt to the collective field. So I already made that decision. I'm going to move the car. But what happened, one thing leads to the next. And then it comes to the next day and I haven't moved the car because it got dark and it was not safe to do it. But I was fully intending to do it as soon as possible, which was the next day. I wake up and on the windshield of my car is a nice little note. Now, it wasn't anger. It wasn't hate. It wasn't pointing fingers. It was love and understanding. What that note said is, yesterday you agreed to move your car. Today the car is still here. Why? Question mark. And it wasn't coming from a petty place. It was coming from a truly wanting to understand what's happening. And that is how deep a self-organizing culture goes, is that she's no specific member. As I mentioned, she's just someone who's there to create happiness and love for everyone, as everyone else is. And she asked questions, which made me ask the question. She didn't judge, she didn't project, she said, why is this happening? And that meant that even more, I was already going to do it, but I just found that so beautiful and I moved the car, right? So this is where the self-replication, self-repairing starts to truly happen in a culture of embodying these values of love and connection and unity, is when it's ingrained in everyone. That means I'd only been in that culture 2 days, and it took me 2 days to basically submit my own ego and to enter into something which was benefiting me and others. And actually it was so much better not to have the car there. And there's a reason why they did it, right? To be connected to nature. And I could only understand that later on, but the cultural mold allowed it to take place and allowed anyone coming in to adapt. But it takes time to reach a level where that's so strong that it's self-repairing. And I think that's what any new community, any new system has to learn, is how to grow the seed with the integrity of these initial people that started coming into as a council in a safe environment, which is nurturing of that growth into that harmony, to get to a stage where that can self-perpetuate and grow further and further and further, no matter who's coming in. There's work to be done, but it's fully possible.
And that only comes from one thing. They're all on the same vision.
Yeah, exactly.
As soon as you're clear on the vision, as soon as you know what the mission is, as soon as you know what those core values are, you're going to move in a certain direction, and if something's out of alignment with it, you know what your boundaries are, and you don't want to have boundaries because we want to create an environment that's limitless. But without the boundaries, there's chaos, and what we're looking for is coherence.
Yeah. So it's something very powerful in communities that if it's one person, let's say in your car, for example, coming, there could have been an ego clash. Oh, yeah, no, I'm allowed to have my car here. I need it because for whatever reason of the mind. When we start to get in a community or council, many of the same reflection, then that's when we start to like accelerate the process of, it's not me fighting with that and me trying to defend myself. It's that, oh yeah, I've got that reflection for that person. And then from that same mirror for another one, and from another one, and from another one. And then they start to be like having a process that's accelerated. That's the value of being in having a council. The other thing that's very powerful and what that you said is to have love at the center. The law of nature, whatever you want to call it. Love, what makes, because nature is naturally harmonizing into something perfect. But if by having spent so many years in nature, I realized that yes, the result is perfect, but it took a long time to get this perfection. Because if you plant a tree, if you look at a tree in one place, it will try to grow and evolve and survive and prosper and kill everything else around. Like nature is very selfish. It reaches a balance after a while, but that's what happens in Australia when they introduce seeds from England for decoration, and then suddenly the really pretty little pink flower that was a small bush in England turned into a huge, taking over the rainforest bush. And then you say, oh my God, that's the end of the world. But I had them on my property, and after so big, I can't even chop it with a machete. Like it's just like, okay, I fucking give up. There's purple flower everywhere. But then after 5 years, after giving up, I realized, oh my God, they're all dead. And what happened is they suffocated themselves because they killed everything else around, and somehow they died. So suddenly there's a big, huge, empty area with no purple flower anymore. But it took like several years. So how can we accelerate this process? Because as human beings, we are the only species that can see the past, reflect on the past, learn the lesson, and project in the future because we have this consciousness. So how can we learn the lesson from the past, not reinvent the wheel, use those lessons from the past so that we can create in our lifetime something that satisfies us instead of waiting for 1 billion years for the river to carve the rock the way we want it so that our children can have a beach. Like, I don't want to wait a few million years for that. But we have this capability as humans to learn from the past and create the present to create the future we want.
Something that's really important in accelerating this is because councils are important, but if you get a problem on your foot and a cut, what happens? Immediately antibodies come, and immediately the healing mechanism in the body localizes to be able to fix that. Imagine if when you had a cut on your foot and it started to infect, if there needed to be a council that forms to start making a decision about what resources we're going to send to the foot and how we're going to heal that problem. And then suddenly the little toe infection is now a huge infection on the level of your whole foot's infected. And that's a lot how old paradigm governance works with these huge, like consortiums and councils of people making decisions on things. And by the time the decision's made and everyone's agreed, it's already like 10 times worse than when it started.
Governments don't work.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's where we need to have that type of consciousness that's ingrained at every cell can self-perpetuate and self-repair, right? And
It's exactly like your situation. I bet whoever gave you the conversation, whoever gave you the note, probably didn't even discuss it with anybody.
no, she just took action.
Exactly. Yeah. And it has to be that level of leadership where, like within our organization, and again, this is when you've got somebody who kind of knows the road ahead, that leadership comes in. So one of the things that we say with our company is there was a bit where I found out that there were conversations happening. Well, this is not my role. It's not all my responsibility. So I pulled in everyone and I said, right, now we reset the playing field. New rules for the next chapter. And the rules are, because we're a growing company and we're growing fast, there's going to be growing pains. Now, if something comes into your awareness, if something comes on your radar, it's not for you to delegate it and pass the buck. It's given to you from the universe for you to deal with it in the moment. And what it does is it actually empowers those people to figure out what the solution is.
Yeah.
So these things can be super essential in growth. These are like the antibodies going in. They're super important in growing the community, because without that infection going in, without that pain going in, most people don't get empowered.
Yes. And it also depends on the scale of the decision, right? If it's a note to say you should move your car, of course, we don't want a council. However, if we're going to decide, okay, what type of village are we going to build here, or we need to build a bridge, then it's not going to be like, oh, someone got a message and does it.
But
So I think it depends on the scale. And actually, I talked about seeds and HIFA, and talking with Nick earlier, he found that indeed, as you said, the voting mechanism didn't work very well because you had too many people involved. However, what they found for big decisions and plans was that the council structure was actually what was working better.
is basically, are we making a decision that's expanding our common vision, in which case we need coherence and a council to come together because we're expanding or changing something, and then everyone should be aligned with that because we're all here for that reason? Or is it a decision which is enforcing or getting more precision into something we've already agreed on? In the case of moving the car, there, she literally said, yeah, we all came into consensus, which is one of the ways they have these circles that they form in the rainbow, decision making on a certain topic. We came into consensus that there's no vehicles around common areas and we keep them in the parking lot. And that was something which everyone agreed to. In other words, is part of the plan and part of the vision of what we're manifesting. So she could act independently as an agent on something which we've all agreed to, because she's in service to those rules of the game, which I talked about, which if everyone knows the rules of the game, the plan, why we're here, what we're creating, the vision, then we can self-organize and play the game together.
Yeah.
Right. And we can all make sure the game is playing at whatever scale. So we need the balance between the councils which expand things, but most of the day-to-day stuff is not sitting around talking about stuff. Most of the day-to-day stuff is actually going and doing what we've all said we're here to do, and relying on each other to self-organize. And then when tensions come up, using the cultural tools we have to realign with the vision, keep moving in the momentum that we are all here to create together.
I think
Which
that
comes as rules. So
yeah, the day-to-day operations are under the umbrella, or rather, you know, it's more the fruit of thy labor.
Yeah.
Because the mud is where the geometry, that's where the seed is the geometry. So most people are going towards community and they're thinking the community is actually, you know, the seed. Actually, the community is the lotus blossom, or it's the fruit of the tree.
Yeah.
You don't try to make community happen. Community is a byproduct. That's when people say, hey, Miracle, let's create community. I want to know what you're doing with community. I'm like, I look at him and I just very frankly say, fuck community. I'm not going to be part of your community. Because the way that you're mentally looking at this, you're not looking at community as the fruit.
Yeah.
You don't even need to make community. Community just happens. It's just like a byproduct. It's like it's the seed that then develops. And one thing I was just listening to you all guys is the concept of resilience. Like resilience is so crucial, because you could literally we have 6 other women right now that are non-locally having the same conversation around a round table, around an egg table right now, having a similar conversation about core feminine values and leadership and what it means to create a whole new type of room intelligence community right now, something iteration of that. That's happening right now in another dimension. Us 6 of us are activating the masculine roles, right? But if you can imagine putting us all 12 together and saying, one sample group, we're going to give you $10 million and you can do whatever you want. And then another group is, we're not going to give you any money, but we're going to give you some resources and some land. And you can do whatever you want. It'd be very interesting to see out of the resilience, right? Because we're talking about like plants. It's like in Hawaii, we have areas where you can plant a noni tree in a place where there's no water and it's all volcanic rocks, and it will thrive. Why does it thrive? Because of resilience and its intelligence in the seed and what it needs to go up against in order to get water and survive and actually grow and flower and actually create noni. That's why noni is like one of the highest mineralized fruits in here and in tropical environments, because it has massive resilience. And so there's something about resilience that's really crucial, that is so important to the flowering of the seed to even get a fruit. Is you, in a way, if you can even like create challenging environments, self-organizing challenging environments, so that you can actualize resilience before resilience comes out of the blue and you're not prepared. That actually is going to be something that really assists this concept of new earth development, governance, alignment, you know, whether it's a healing center, resort, an aligned community, you know. For me, it's alignment. It's just, it comes down to alignment, you know, and if your heart's in it, you're going to align. And then you don't need 12 people all working in the garden. You actually need one facet of the group, and it could be two, it could be a man or woman that take over the garden aspects. And then there's 5 other thematic living themes that are crucial to creating a coherent living field. And so, yeah, I mean, I could go into that, but basically, that could be another time. But I'm just saying, like, the resilient aspect is also crucial. As much as we want to create coherence, yeah, and also throw in some, like we were saying earlier, throw in some organized chaos. Like, actually intend to do that, to see who actually has the maturation and the strength and the fortitude to get out, because you're gonna weed out all the weak ones. You're gonna weed out the beings who are like, I can't handle this. It's too emotional for me. I can't handle the transpersonal psychological aspects of this. You know, there's an aspect when you want to seed the intelligence of the seed, you need everyone to be on board for that particular angle, curvature of that geometry. Because if they're not able to do that, you're going to have a faulty seed, and nothing will grow no matter how much water you put into it, no matter how much chicken shit you put into it. It's not happening. And I'm sure you've experienced that. And I've been a gardener. I've had land. It just doesn't work. If the seed is dysfunctional, if it's not in the right geometry or there's missing pieces of it, it will not grow.
Yeah. What I found is
So-
that for it to work, it needs to be heart-centered, like we just said. And there are ways to bring a group into headspace, and they all argue with each other on the table, and then you get a G20 where it doesn't go anywhere. Or you can take a group into a process where they go into their heart, and no matter what you make them do, you take like some dysfunctional teenagers reject from society, you send them for a week climbing a mountain, camping together in mountain. At the end of the week together, they all love each other, they all want to create community together. And there are ways to bring a group into the heart, and the bad seed that you were mentioning suddenly transmute into a really good seed. And I feel this is really important if we want to have a functioning community, to have those processes on a very regular basis, consciously created, because they naturally happen in nature with pain and survival. Like, if we don't do it consciously in a intentional, loving way, and create processes that bring us together in the heart, not in the mind, where we unify with the heart, and then we all agree, because we're in our heart. If we don't do it, nature will do it in a painful way for survival, and then we will unite in pain in survival. So it's our choice as conscious human being to choose, do I want to do the work willingly? Do I want to walk into the fire and then do this work, which is going to be taking time for my personal thing? Yeah, I have to commit some time and have the discipline to do that. And then we'll all be in the heart. Or do I let nature force, like, oh, guys, we have an emergency. We all need to go and do this now. It's an emergency. And then we all come together fixing the bridge or fixing the whatever it is. And yeah, it's an emergency.
So basically, coherence and resilience are 2 of the most important ingredients, especially at the initial stage when something is growing, strength of the system of the pillars. And initially, if the coherence isn't there, it could be different views. And this happened to me in the team I was operating with a year ago, is that we thought we were building the same thing, but we weren't actually building the same thing. We had different views, and that completely disperses the energy. So if that coherence is there, that resilience to stay in and ride out the waves and the challenges and the bumps on the road, then it can actually grow the core to a level where if a bad seed comes in, then it's no longer an issue, because there's enough group harmony and directionality that they'll either self-eject, which is part of the beautiful nature of a self-correcting field, or they'll cohere into it, and everyone will support that environment.
Yeah.
So from seed, and this is when the seed is growing into it, it can actually be a strong tree. There's actually some conditions that need to be there in nature to ensure it survives those initial stages of life until it has deep enough roots and leaves to withhold harder and harder conditions. And that concept of stewardship, right? How parents look after a child until it's old enough to look after itself and go to the next stages of its life is also needed very strongly in the seed of a company, of a project, of a community, that there are people who are there dedicated, and that is the key word which got brought up, dedication, and willing to show up and put time in and show up to coherence meetings and create a field. And that stewards the whole thing into a stage where it can be alive on its own and grow on its own, and everyone can drop in and out because there's enough coherence as a whole.
And that's where you need the elder generation, like when you came into the meeting the other day, to be able to see that you've seen so many of these really good intentions go into communities, and because they didn't know the road ahead, ultimately the whole thing ended up imploding. If they had someone who foresaw the road ahead to say, hang on guys, you're actually heading off the freaking cliff. You don't realize that you're moving at a good speed. You think it's moving, before you know it, bam, you got no freaking chance to survive when it goes off the cliff. You need to be able to learn from all of those mistakes that have happened, to know, right, what doesn't work, so we're not going to repeat this, and what needs to be integrated, what needs to be planned, what new seeds need to be planted, so that we're never going to be heading off the cliff, and we're heading into a way where the whole community, because when it goes off the cliff, no one wins. Everybody's now in either survival mode, and if they go in survival mode, they start acting like vultures. I've seen it happen with beings who at some point you would speak to them and you would say, this is a freaking conscious person. But then the environment changes, the energy within the environment changes, the focus changes, the energy changes, and all of a sudden, everyone's now grasping for survival. And it's freaking toxic is what it is. And it takes people like you and I who are old enough to have been involved with stuff like that to say, listen, this is why you need the council on these big decisions for where's the big ship going? We can create little ships and they can fly out and do all these other things and go out and do other stuff and bring it back. But the big ship has to be guided by a council. It has to be.
There are technologies and techniques when a problem arises, because the mystery with nature will bring challenges. Like one day there's a big storm, and then there's a flood, and then something happens. And when the community is divided, like it's very interesting to know what has been done in the previous community, in the big ones that are successful, what has been done, what has worked, what has not worked. One of the things that's been working is exactly what you said. People need to get out of their mind and the survivor. They need to come into their heart, into the immense, infinite, divine self that we have all inside ourselves. So there's several big communities. Like there's an interview of Ramdas, so they explained that the journalist asked him, "Oh, what did you used to do when people are divided? What do you do?" Well, he said, "Well, we just took LSD all together, and then the problem was gone."
A good friend of mine did his documentary, and he's a freaking legend.
There you go.
Because he's
Osho.
real.
Yeah, Osho. What did they do? We took MDMA together, and then the problem is gone. Yeah.
Let's not say that drugs is the solution, though.
Yeah.
So
I
the
think that's an old paradigm, to be honest.
It's an old interview
No.
from. It's an. Yeah.
This
Let me
is why
finish.
coherent meditation is so.
Let
yeah.
me finish, please.
Yeah.
So now we know that drugs, like has been found out, they are not bad. They are amazing, but they fuck you up because they have a very big side effect. So when you take LSD, there's a lot of side effects that we know now in our generation. We don't want to deal with that. So we're not druggies. When you smoke marijuana, you lose your memory. You don't want to lose my memory. So when you take MDMA, there's a high toxicity. We know that. So we don't want to do that. We're not saying that drugs, but what we want is to realize that some people have done some processes that brought the whole community back together. And can we have a process that brings the community back together that is in line with what the evolution of our consciousness right now, where we want to go, and doesn't have the side effect of those trials and error that they've done in the previous generation, 20, 30, 40 years ago.
The question to me also, and is it can help, but did it fix the foundation? So when you give the example, okay, let's take LSD or MDMA together, or even without drugs, some things where we align our hearts, I think is very important on one hand. And on the other hand, sometimes it can look a bit like duct taping and it works for a week or a month. So there might be also, I think it's part of it, but then it can also, I hide some more foundational thing, and it looks like it's fixed, but it's not at the core. That's
Actually, what I've observed works, and when they stop the process, it stops working in communities. Is doing something together that is not minding. So it's doing it not in the mind.
and
Like,
actually.
the Tahitian go fishing together. The whole community comes because they know that one season this type of fish is coming and it's going to go through that channel, and the whole community, they need the whole community to come and be in the water to guide the fish through this channel so that they catch the fish into this little lagoon.
Yeah.
The whole community come together, they catch the fish, they eat together, they grill the fish. It turns into a big folklore later. But when they come together and they do this regularly, they have these rituals, come together, that's when the community come together. And when they stop that because the church decided, oh, you can't do that anymore, now we're going to do something different, then the community, the cohesion of the community disappears. So it's very interesting to watch. I mean, look where we are here. Why is Bali amazing? Why is Bali so different than the other islands everywhere around the world? Just observe. 5 a.m. every morning, there's incense. The whole Ubud smells like incense. There's flowers everywhere. The streets are swept. Tourists who drink beer and wake up at 10 in the morning, they don't notice that. It's just, oh, it's amazing here. but really, there's something behind.
Prayer.
There's prayer.
Meditation.
There's prayer. There's meditation. They all do this together. They all like they know each other. There's a lot of depth and power. This like if you remove those rituals, and you can see what happened in Java or in other islands, the fight is completely different.
And that's what I feel is the balance, actually, because you were talking of our personal experience living in community. I feel the reason why we split at some point was actually a bit of both. Once we stopped doing some of those rituals, which I feel affected the heart connection. And the second thing is we also could have clarified more the plan together. So I feel there were some which was those rituals and connection, and some that were maybe more foundational things that even with heart connection might have been too strong overall to work.
Yeah.
And ritual, this is an important thing, is you don't want the ritual to be something people are not looking forward to going to. Like we used to have these logistics meetings, and it was like, oh, heavy, discussing serious stuff. One of the biggest reasons communities fail is lack of celebration, lack of connection, lack of love and joy of life.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so there needs to be ritual.
Exactly.
And sometimes that's having difficult meetings about difficult topics, but there needs to be just as much, if not more, of ritual where we're all here in the bliss and the joy of life and why we're doing this and why we're coming together and making some amazing stuff happen. And that needs to be foundational to it all.
Exactly. And what's behind what you say is the balance of the masculine and the feminine. The logistic missing is like, we have a goal. This is very masculine goal orientated. And what you say, what was missing is this, oh, we want to have an amazing moment together. And let's bring some grapes and some massage and some music and have an ecstatic dance at the beginning or something like that. And bringing this harmony of the masculine and the feminine is making people come together in their heart, and then they are making decisions in their heart instead of the mind. And they want to come back and do it more.
And to do it where it's consistent, because it's only through consistency can you win. It's like, you know, if you want to have a great body, you're not going to go and have one workout and think you're fit for life.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Yeah.
Putting that pressure on.
Has to be
And like what when we went through the stuff with you, part of the challenge is that whoever's in the community, whoever's in the tribe, there has to be the common vision of where things are going. But there has to be those little stepping stones so that every little time that you're stepping up, you're celebrating the little wins.
Yes.
And those little celebrations that bring people together. Hey, look what we just achieved. Like we do it in our company. We did it on our first freaking sale. You would think that we just had a freaking baby. And we're celebrating like we've just freaking saved the world. And I'm like, guys, this is the energy that we build every freaking celebration on. Every win we have, we're celebrating your win. We're celebrating your win. We're celebrating your win, because ultimately all of that energy is what gets fed into the community. So those little wins and celebrations are key, because it keeps people in those good vibes.
Yeah.
And actually having a relationship with discipline, sometimes discipline can feel heavy. But if you look at the origin of the word discipline, it's from discipleship. It's from being a disciple of the higher purpose, right? So being disciplined means that we're all choosing that we're creating heaven on earth. And so we're choosing to celebrate, and we're choosing to do that often. And we're choosing to deal with the shit so that it doesn't start infecting everything. And we do that often so that we stay coherent. Discipline is about reaching a level of coherence that can be consistent over time, being disciples of the vision that we're creating and continuously learning and growing it all together throughout time. It's that consistency which allows us to actually get there.
And that's where you've got to have an experienced point of view of. I'll use the example of when I went back to gymnastics with a 2 times world champion gymnastics coach, and he's like, right, we're going to be doing this every single day, and it's strength, flexibility, balance training, which was just laying the foundations, and it could have been boring as hell, and it was, but he was saying you just got to mature, because if you want to be a champion, you've got to take on a champion mindset. And as soon as he said that, it was like, I linked this with the champion mindset. This is how I become a champion, by doing this stuff every single day. And then it feels an honor to do it, because if it doesn't feel like an honor to do it and it feels heavy, guess what you're going to have? A teenager that's a pain in the freaking ass. And there's plenty of them around. Whereas if you get a teenager focused on something that's going to serve them, right? What do you want in life? Oh, I want to be a musician. Right. 8 hours a day. Get your fingers on the freaking piano if you want to be a piano player.
Yeah.
How many people can survive that? Only the ones that put their love and their heart and soul into it. And that's why you've got to find, like, what lights you up, what lights you up, what lights you up. And you're going to have all these different characters that they all need to get lit up in different ways.
There's actually something that's more than just the discipline that you're touching on here, which is a common desire for excellence and a common striving for mastery, individual and collective. Discipline is the consistency, but the common desire is that goal that we're all moving towards, and we take that goal and we bring it into our life and we say, because I care so much about this future of heaven on earth we're creating and all agreeing to, I'm going to commit myself to excellence in my own path. I'm going to walk a path of virtue every day. I'm going to deal with my shit when it comes up. I'm going to get better at the things I love doing, because that's why I'm here in the first place. And I'm going to trust that others around me are going to support me, and we're creating a culture where we encourage each other not to get better at anything, but at things which light us up, because we want to live in a world where we're all lit up and infused with life and with love and with spirit for what we're doing. And so supporting each other to find what that is, to develop it, to nurture it, to expand it, and to do that individually and as a whole, so that we create that reality where that is the daily living experience. We tapped into that in the beginning, and that's how you do it, is with a culture that encourages that in every single moment.
Yeah. Well, you're filling up your quotient, your battery cells, so to speak, so that on the days where it's incoherent or strife and strain comes up and you got to go through a process, it helps that you have a battery filled up. You know, it's like if the battery is not filled up, you know, like for example, we spent 6 months just to write the plan. 6 months living together in a 6-bedroom house, living together, thriving together, 24/7, 6 months, like one of these like Survivor movies or MTV, you know, specials where they pay you and you get to live with this person that you don't even know. Well, we all knew each other, and it was like, okay, 6 months, 3 men, 3 women, let's write an equal value philosophy, gender equanimity plan for how to create a new earth template, you know? And every day we had to do a discipline. So every person, except for the 7th day, right, 7 days in a week, we got to do just basic meditation, but everyone got to offer a different type of meditation, whether it was a dynamic ecstatic dance, whether it was breath work, whether it was something where we could get out of the mind into the heart, use the body's faculties to get into coherence. Then we would start the meetings, the downloads, the streaming, work on the model, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. But if you don't have that discipline, and discipline doesn't have to be rote and boring, doesn't have to be memorized. It can be exciting. It can be dynamic, you know? It's all about getting to that still point, you know, in the heart. And then we're all connected. And then boom, I mean, we've all been there. Everything flows. Your whole team, your whole community, your whole family, it just flows after that. And the days you don't do that, I mean, there's no failed meditation experiment. Meditation is not a failure ever. You either see the results or you don't. That's it. And even if you have a bad meditation or bad collective meditation, we knew that we got through something and we were able to do it better the next day.
I think that's where
it takes that. Yeah, everyone has to commit. It can't be just 2 of the 6
But you
or
can't do it when
half
you
your
feel
team.
like
It
it.
just doesn't work. It.
Because like as Joe.
Yeah, and if you don't feel like showing up, or
Yeah.
I don't, I'm feeling a little hungover, whatever the thing is that you're.
Yeah, you're not.
There's no victims here,
Yeah.
You have to get out of that victim circuit, the victim, hero, even villain circuit. Get out of that circuit and just show up, And yeah, that's really, that's the resilient. That's the resilient individual.
Well, I think
And
everyone has to have the
so-
responsibility of making sure that every single day that their cup's filled up.
Yeah.
Because like when we run our events, I show people how to fill their cups up in ways that they've never experienced before. And how do I do it? I freaking squeeze them, I push them. And literally everybody breaks at some point. I can't do it. I'm like, bull freaking shit. This is what fucks you up in life. Because this is the limitation of your mind.
That's right.
And because I create an environment where they can trust something bigger than themselves, they allow me to push them. And when you've got that high level of discipline, where every single day, these are the fundamental things that you have to do to make sure that your cup's filled up.
Yeah.
And if you come to the table and your cup's not filled up, it's not go away and deal with it. It's go and freaking fill your cup up and come back because we need you. It's like we need this arm work and we need this leg work and we need you working. And if they're not at that level, they're not in the council.
And that's accountability. That's accountability that we have to each other, and also on a more structural matter.
Accountability to yourself.
Yeah, but we uphold
gotta
it in
be
each
to
other.
this.
too.
Yeah, 100%.
That's protocol alignment.
And that's where the concept of even qualifying criteria that we all create together, what it means to be here and taking decisions together, become super important. We're here to decide, and these are the things which we need to fulfill. If someone is not able to meet that qualifying criteria, feeling centered, present, heart open, for example, then we can't be taking decisions because suddenly we're no longer in the field that we need to be to
that's
create it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you're in pain, trauma, stress, anxiety, blah blah blah. Which actually leads, not to segue out, but you asked before, maybe this is a good time for that, is why this hasn't happened in Bali, and I've been here since 2013.
yeah,
Is what we're saying right now with the juicy tantric static dance, all these different pods form the Ubuntu tribe, the community, right?
Yeah.
One of the main reasons why it hasn't gone to that next level of the embodiment is because of what we're talking about right here. It's the collective discipline for a common vision with core values that will lead to the common vision.
and there's so much
To get
distraction
people-
available.
Absolutely. That's
it.
the chaos.
Yeah.
And there's no organization in the chaos. Chaos is great. We all can have fun and celebrate. But if you're not putting that energy towards filling a battery up, the collective battery, then it's just dissipating. And it's just going to wherever. And, people leave. It's transient. It's like, oh, I'm here, I'm there, I'm never.
Actually,
That's the reason that also happens is because the Balinese have the discipline.
Yes.
And then there's not enough people. That's
They
why I
do
speak
well.
Bahasa. That's why I learned the language. That's why I'm like in the Navi clan, is because I had to learn the process of becoming Balinese. How many of those expats are doing that? Like I come here from 8 years ago to now. It's 90% even less.
Yeah.
Back in 2015, 2016, I could go to Alchemy, I could speak Bahasa with expats. Now it's like, are you speaking Greek? Like, dude, you're fucking in Indonesia, man. At least learn. Like, don't just demand that you gotta speak English. Like, learn some Bahasa. Learn. When in Rome, be Roman. This is their culture. Respect that.
Thank
At least
God that the Balinese have upheld that pillar of integrity to allow the rest of the experiments to take place from consciousness perspective, to allow us to be here and think, how do we bring what we're talking about today, have that consistency and create a coherent field, even starting small somewhere in Bali, but that can even grow to the level of the island and to the level of the planet, of people coming and celebrating, yes, doing all these new paradigm things like Ubud has managed to embody, but doing it in a manner which is constructing upon itself and building towards a coherent vision that we can all get behind and feel purpose and daily meaning and intimacy with the vision, with ourselves, with each other to be able to get there. And that's something which is also missing a lot, I find, here, is people get often to like 6, 7 out of 10 level intimate experiences in places like Ubud, ecstatic dances, contact improvisation, and it fulfills them enough to not need to go further. But actually getting to the 9s and the 10s, where you're really raw and vulnerable and pushed to the edge of what you know and to grow, now that takes courage, and that takes a collective courage, and it's easier to bypass it when you're getting to the 6 and the 7s.
And what's very important is the clarity of the stages of evolution of our personalities, of our soul, and of our humanness. Because it has not been clear, and there is often an excommunication of the person who's behaving badly and think, oh, I'm a bad person because for whatever reason I'm doing this behavior and it's not acceptable in our society. And we've been told since a little child, you're a bad person. But if we look on the evolution of our personalities, and it's suddenly because, oh, actually it's just a stage. My selfishness is a stage, because when I fulfill my selfishness and I go into more like the togetherness and the divine being that I am, I realize that I'm not a bad person. I'm just an immature on this little area of my life. When that changes the whole thing, because that person can go and experience what they need to experience to accelerate the evolution. It's very easy with selfishness. Like there's different stages of evolution. Like first we are selfish. It's me. It's about me because I need to grow myself. I need to strengthen myself. And after the me is the we. And after the we, it's the I am the divine, and the divine is channeling through me, and I'm going to give this divine through my beingness. But if someone at 45 years old is being told, you're fucking selfish, go away, it's not going to go away. He's going to hide it. He's going to say, I'm going to pretend I'm generous, but really I just want to have more things for myself, because he hasn't gone through this evolution. And someone who is 45 or 30, who hasn't gone through a selfish stage of a 5-year-old or 6 years old, when we put him into a situation where he can experience this selfishness, it's going to accelerate super fast. It's not going to take him 45 years. It's going to take him maybe a week, maybe 3 days, maybe 10 days, maybe a month, but he's going to be completely in line after a very short process where he can experience the piece that has been missing. And that clarity of the evolution of our consciousness, which has been mapped already by many different cultures and traditions, and can be, it has to be clear. Like, this is the roadmap, this is where I am. Okay, I don't have to feel bad because I'm not where I was told I should be.
And actually, it's an act of giving to take time for yourself. It's not an act of taking. So selfish, I understand what you're trying to say, but it's actually selfless acts to take care of yourself.
Self-love.
Self-love,
Overflowing.
And I think people get caught up on, and the selfish word gets used in all sorts of directions that can get misinterpreted. And I think ultimately we need to come back to, is this an act of giving or an act of taking? And if you're giving to yourself, that's selfless. If you're taking the time, I'm using the word, but if you're going and regenerating yourself and healing and taking time apart, you're giving. You're giving to yourself, and then as you can give to the whole. So it's not selfless, actually. It's
Self-overflowing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we want overflowing.
Yeah.
Your cup overfloweth.
Yeah.
If your cup is half empty, you got to be selfish enough to go and spend time to fill your cup.
Yeah.
Or else you're just creating codependence with other people's cups.
Yeah.
And that's never going to be beneficial for the fullest potential of all beings.
Well, as you said, when you're in oneness, actually they merge, because your selfishness becomes the selflessness, because taking care of yourself is going to help the whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but this has to be clearly mapped, because when we ostracize a kid or someone saying you're a bad person, it's not going to go away. Like this is the story of Sleeping Beauty and the bad witch. She's not a bad witch. She's the one nobody wants to talk about because she's got a bad character.
Well, you're
always
going to have these types of people. I mean, in every experience, they turn up.
Yeah.
Because they can feel the love.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, every major generating energy field of an event, an experience, whatever, will attract these types of characters. I've had it every time.
Yeah.
You know, sacred sites, groups at sacred sites, you know, I mean, you know,
it's very
even
interesting.
Dr. Joe talks about it. He's got 1,500 people. I mean, people show up that are very selfish, and they're able to be in their selfishness and feel the love without judgment. And if they choose to do the work or not, he's not telling them to go.
No,
we're not kicking them out of the monastery. He's saying, okay,
that's the thing.
You're included.
Yeah.
And
this is your space over there.
We're going to hold this frequency and only this frequency.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you can either rise up and overflow because your cup is only a quarter full, or not full at all with anything, empty, or you know, they'll self-select themselves to leave, because that's also a choice too. It's like they can't handle the alignment of the frequency, I mean, that's just the bandwidth of the radio station. They're listening to it. They're listening to metal, heavy metal instead of like classical music. It's like they clash. So someone who only listens to Metallica and doesn't ever listen to Chopin or, Beethoven, I mean, they can hang for a little bit, but they're going to get so triggered that either they can change their frequency or they're going to skedaddle, and find heavy metal in another place. And that's where you need to like have the wisdom, the pistis sophia intelligence to realize, okay, the feminine can hold all of that, and people self-select themselves to leave because the frequency and their bandwidth isn't able to handle what's available. So
Also, more back to community and governance. There's when you talked about Osho, I feel that's also a community we haven't talked about much, and I've been looking a bit into. And you talked also about doing things from the desert, so I think that's also a good experiment. And what I have seen there, I watched Wild Wild Country, and I also did an interview with Mananda Sarita, who's here in Bali, and she lived 25 years in Osho's community.
that Bend, Oregon one, right?
Yeah,
That imploded.
mainly, yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's a podcast. If you look, Mananda Sarita, I did 2 podcasts with her. That's the second one. And so she told me about it. What I found was quite successful, actually, is like people were really having a common vision and enthusiastically building things and working all day without having people really needing them to tell them they have to. And there was also another thing was celebration, right? They would often go in the dome and just go crazy together, crazy celebration. That's the thing that really worked well. And then I think the governance and the leadership, mainly first having one person that when they, if they left or didn't really take care of the leadership, things would crumble. And then the story with Sheila and a lot of things. Then the leadership and the governance, I think, was the main thing that made it fail.
Beautiful. And actually, it'd be good that we start to wrap up this conversation and delivering one last insight feels really good. And so I'd love to share more on a bit of an insight. And that's ultimately the most important thing I feel of all of this is to just go and try. And it's amazing to leverage the wisdom like we're doing now, and it's very needed. The biggest wisdom comes from on the ground experiments, and lock in the objective, where we're going, what we want to create, and then to just go and try and iterate and design, and don't try and plan for possible failures ahead of time. Be aware of what could happen and try to make the system so it can self-correct for that. But go in it and watch the things not work and fix them and come into the solutions that become an embodied wisdom of actually doing it. And so many people sitting around the table talking about doing things and not actually putting action together. And I think this is one of the things which makes people here around this table unique, is that we are all doers and we've all made things happen, and we're here to make things happen alone and all together. And actually putting that action in and making it manifest through the iterative process and the growing and the implementation, and then allowing it to evolve into a space where others can come and learn from what we've done and try their own version with the wisdom aggregating over time. That to me is what's exciting and what's possible and what we're here to do.
Thank you. I would say think big, because intelligence is variety. If we have a small area, if we think small, we say, oh yeah, we have 10 acres, 20 acres. But in those 10 acres that are going to become quite small at the end after a while, if we have a new soul coming with an amazing idea, but no one knows about it yet, and we'll say, no, we don't do that here. If there's no space, this idea is going to stop. But if there is space, it's like, yeah, go and do that over there, because we don't want to hear the noise you're making. And then we realize, oh my God, what he's doing is amazing. How many times have we had this experience? That crazy guy actually is doing something really cool. We need to have space for this mystery to come out and to unfold, because this is what's going to make this place amazing. If it's too small and we block it, this is what makes those communities die. It's because, no, we don't do that here. No, we don't do that here. And after decades, this is because it's not big enough to have a recycling of the gray water properly. We need to think big and have enough space for the variety of nature to unfold without being inconvenienced by it, and to have our open mind, have enough space to for it to happen. That's why I like the idea of Ahmed. There's no space. I like the idea of those islands where no one lives because there's space.
And that space is both external and internal. The spaciousness we create and the openness we create for all types of experiences to emerge.
Yeah, I think that's also part of the whole adherence to a meditative practice, you know, to get coherent with oneself first and go into infinite space, nothingness, void, whatever, because that demystifies any antagonism with religion, cultures, upbringing, people bringing whatever culture they're from, whether it's Incan, Balinese, Hawaiian, Indonesian, you know, pagan, I don't know, whatever. Everyone has something from their subconscious, unconscious, their blood lineage, right? And how do we come to a commonality in the action when it comes to belief systems and spiritual belief systems and just consciousness? And that's also part of obviously what we're doing with this tension of like unifying these values and this common vision towards, okay, what are these things that we're actually going to take action on that we can all agree on? That's also demystifying that we're not here to create another Balinese culture. We're not here to create another Hawaiian culture. We're not here to create another, you know, French culture or pagan culture. We're here to do something completely new that has some of those factors involved, but that it can actually both unify and also not reject. And that is really key. That's key. I mean, I really enjoy what, you know, what Dr. J says about demystifying. So, you know, but I also think that science also can be a religion. It can also be a culture. But his whole thing is demystifying so that meditation and neuroscience are a culture, because it's a languaging that everyone has to learn in school, right? I mean, most of us here learn some of those basic tenets, right? And we all come from different backgrounds. So we have to find something that, whether it's just some, you know, something around the practice, but the practice has to be then what is also part of the glue that then gives birth to everything else that's going to be watered and fertilized to grow within, you know, whatever's going to happen. And
I think the
unfold,
way to do that
you know?
is
So-
you look at each other as a battery. Like if you've got a mobile phone and you've got 10%, you ain't going to get much out of it on your battery. If you've got 3% and you've got to upload and download stuff, you've got to connect with people. The way that you're going to be able to use it well is you're going to plug it in. And this is where we talked about filling up our cup and let it overspill. Because when your cup is is filled up and it's overspilling, you're present in a different frequency. If everybody's cup was overspilling, you got nothing to prove. You got nothing to gain.
Yeah.
All you want is to evolve.
Yeah.
And I want you to evolve, and I want you to evolve, and I want you to evolve, and I want to see you grow and flourish. Because I want to see, you know, when we see like a lotus flower open up, it's freaking beauty. And there's beauty in that opening. And the only way that I've seen that can happen is when people bring a full cup to the table.
Yeah.
Because then you can contribute to something beyond yourself.
Yeah.
And that you've got to do the work. So it comes back to being completely freaking selfish. So you can serve at a high level. You have to give yourself every single day, right, what's going to fill my battery up? What's going to charge me up? And it can be different for everyone.
Yeah.
It really can be different for everyone.
It is different.
Because nothing is going to electrify us like passion. And your passion can be different from your passion, can be different from mine. There can be some basic fundamentals in there. But you talk about meditation. You know, I coach super high level people. Their meditation could be a sport. Their meditation could be, you know, they can be a long distance runner. And when I'm talking to them, I'm like, holy shit, this dude's freaking meditating when he's running. This dude's running a marathon. He's in a meditative state while he's in the zone. Because he's not in his head.
Yeah.
And that's firing him up. And he has to then have his family appreciate what he's doing. Like, daddy's got to train X amount of hours a day because this is how daddy feeds the family. And it's allowing all of those elements to be completely charged up. But whose responsibility is it? It's the individual.
Yeah, yes. And if we come into a coherent group where we're self-responsibilizing, we can also start looking out for each other and have that value where if we see a brother or a sister that is not in their alignment, that is struggling, that it's our instinct to go and ask openly, and that it's part of the culture to express openly and for them to feel comfortable to share, because we're all here to help each other. And that, you know, even things like having common objective or a common time where we all share what our objectives are of growth and where we're going and all this, and that others can also be there and look at you in the eyes as who you're becoming and who you're embodying, and catch the parts of you which you're working on reducing that are not serving you, because we're all looking out for each other. So there's self-responsibility to show up and do it, but there's a collective responsibility to each other to be the reflections, consciously helping each other evolve into that greater and greater levels of mastery individually and then as a whole.
To co-create a supportive environment.
Yeah.
Because if the environment is supportive of the vision, then the vision like infuse into me more. So consciously knowing, is what I'm doing supporting the environment for the vision, or is what I'm doing going to be reducing the supportive environment for others?
And you feel it. It's like a mother with a child. That child, like I still have it now. I'm nearly 50 years old. My mum's nearly 80. And I can be, say I'm in a negative vibe. She feels it. Literally, I'll wake up the next day and I can be out here. I can be in another country and I'll get a text or a voice note. Just that feeling like, are you all right? Just checking in with you. And it's like, how? Because she's used to feeling me on a high vibe. And if that vibe has gone down, there's no judgment coming from her. It's a sense of being unconditional love. And this is how we support each other. It's like, if I'm used to connecting with you up here, I want to be able to do anything I can to help you up here. I can't do it for you. But if I've got awareness of, holy shit, Xavier's connecting with Ben out here, then we're going to check in with them.
Guys,
Let's see what's
I'll
going on.
have to go soon, and I think you initiated to do a round of last thoughts, and we can get back into conversation. I'd love to take like 3-4 minutes to share my last thoughts.
Yeah,
To close with it.
it goes to show just how passionate we are about this, and I think we can all appreciate
it's
it.
generating a beautiful field. You know, there's a lot of colors here.
I know this
Energy,
feeling.
passion.
I'm also excited of bringing the non-localized 6 other women that are watching us and doing their own counsel to the table as well. Maybe that could be a future moment, but I'm intending that, and that will change also the dynamics. I mean, we've got really balanced feminine here, but it's also nice to have that reflection in their value because it's so crucial to the magnetic field,
So
the nesting field, what wants to be created or co-created
absolutely,
now in the future.
I intend on that too. Let's dream it into action, and I feel like a few of us have shared our insights. I'm happy with where things are for me. If anyone wants to share final words,
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, I'd love to. Well, first, I'm so grateful to have shared that conversation. It was super exciting, and yeah, we could go for hours, but we'll leave it there for now. But there'll be next sessions, and I want to echo what you said for sure, Oliver, which was, now let's do it. You know, we talk about it, and that's why I brought up the event before, is because to me, and I'm happy to look at other things, but to my awareness, it's so far the most aligned thing that I can think of that is going to happen in that vibe, in that container of actually going from discussion to actual manifestation and experimentation. So echo you, Oliver, on this, and we know we've been like working actively on manifesting together with Place in Mundo, with the communities in Ubud, we're both already committed to going to that event in April and much more. And of course, inviting all the aligned brothers and sisters to come and be like, okay, it's time, let's do it. And I'm in, you know, I'm committing. So that's one thing I wanted to echo on for sure. The second thing was when you talked about being big enough, I totally agree with that. And actually, we talked about a few things as almost values for a community, things that I feel are already done pretty well by a lot of communities, like going back to nature. Some communities do that really well. Connecting with consciousness and being spiritual, and you have ashram communities that do it really well. Working with the collective and conscious communication. You gave the example in Portugal of Tamela, where they do that really well. Also the energy of commitment, some communities do that really well. So we want to keep all of that. I shared in the beginning some things that often don't see as much, can be health, can be sovereignty and sovereign technologies and that big vision. and decentralized governance. And the one thing I feel we could add to that, that you mentioned, Xavier, with being big enough, but would be to, instead of thinking community, thinking networks of community, which allows the flexibility of if someone changes, and because we're humans and we're not robots, as you said, well, there is space to go to a sister community, but still stay in the network and the ecosystem, and having that like really that web that ties things together. So I think thinking this way, rather than I'll do one community, is we'll create a network and even gather existing communities in that network, allow to have both some communities that have really strong foundations, but within the network to have that openness where people can join the network. So that was the second point on the network part. And the last thing I want to share, which is enabled by the decentralized organization and the DAO type, is to think around we need followers in the way that we need leaders, but great followers are also great leaders. There's a video on YouTube of a guy dancing alone, and there's another guy joining the dance, and that starts the movement. What I've seen a lot in conscious communities is people starting a movement. There's no lack of people wanting to start a community, a movement, an online movement, but there's a lack of cohesion and working together. And with the technologies of DAOs, actually, it really allows people to come with their own project and join a bigger project without feeling like they're surrendering their independence and also their own creativity. So I think that's something I'm really excited about in the with the DAO era of community, because even when we look at tribes, there wasn't really that network thing, and that and part of what I'm doing, for example, with that event in April, is someone else initiated it, but with the DAO thing, it's open enough that I feel like I can come with my own child DAOs. So I'll have projects that maybe I initiated or that Oliver initiated, but I'll also be part of the whole, and there's no clash between being a leader and being a follower.
Giving and receiving.
Also.
Yeah, yes, sure. And yeah, to just say one more thing about what you just mentioned, if you have a common plan and a vision that everyone in that unit is working towards, then yeah, you can be fractally beautiful and individual in it and expressing yourself to fulfill it, but you're still all pointing in one overall direction. And so from a nature universal flow consciousness perspective, you need all of those different iterations of beauty at the macro level too. And it's where these different communities come with slightly different concepts, but all aligned in the vision to create heaven on earth. But heaven on earth may look different for different people, and there's different experiments in different ways, and that allows the individual to try and to discover themselves and not to be glued to one space where they can get toxic and then they start projecting on everyone, but their soul's not calling them to be somewhere else, or for a place to only attract certain people and get super focus can be a good thing, but the shadow of that can also be that you're blind to all the other possibilities. So having this variety at a macro level with an ease with an ease of movements, where people are committed to things but also are able to disengage and go somewhere else consciously and with awareness to develop themselves somewhere else, that will create a living organism that's beyond any of us, that can self-organize the awakening consciousness, the awakening light leaders and light workers around the world into growing this interconnected network around the planet.
Boom.
All right.
One thing just to close myself. Yeah, thanks like for the beautiful gathering and everything. I was in a community in Mexico where like the longest lasting community in Mexico where we're Coyote, and a woman of 70 years old told me living in community is the fastest school. It's the fast school. Living. So the mirroring, you know, all the healing that we do in the community, it's powerful. And listening as well, that we need resilient people and full people to start the community as well makes sense, you know. So it's like the both things, you know, to be full ourselves, and we keep mirroring, we keep healing ourselves, and we keep putting ourselves to service for the other ones that maybe need that. Yeah. But,
And they say it takes a village to raise a baby.
yeah,
And
exactly.
yet we're seeing these single mums raising these kids, and how do the kids turn out? With one type of you feeding them.
Yep.
You get that whole community around you. The minds that get created in those communities are phenomenal. If it's
Yeah.
a supportive community,
Yeah, exactly.
which doesn't then crumble.
Yeah. So yeah,
Is she still alive?
yes, I was with her 2 months ago, Tonya. Yeah.
Maybe ask her what are some of the key fundamental things that make this community thrive. Find out what some of the key ingredients are.
Yeah, she told me working in decision making. Like it's important to have a role model of decision making.
Yeah.
She was telling me as well, bring some of the techniques of healing, like Gestalt, body work,
Yeah.
some of them.
Yeah.
The truth circles, like gather every time.
Yeah.
I have something written there. But,
Nice.
yeah, she was sharing that. It's important.
So it feels like these universal truths show up
Yeah.
everywhere
Mm.
from the ancient wisdom, and today we've done a really beautiful job at going across the spectrum of these different possibilities, these different ways of doing it. It's been so beautiful to allow this field to open and for us to express it, I think, with a great deal of clarity and coming into a universal coherence that we talked about and actually happened as we went through. So may this,
Should we close the container?
yeah,
In some way?
exactly. So may this wisdom be serve to inspire, to tap into the deeper questioning of how we can do this, and most importantly, to lead to action individually and as a collective, that we may manifest this world all together. And I propose that in this intention, we close the container to bring this wisdom out.
And I will just say one caveat as an action step.
Yes, please.
If this container of the 6 of these unified men are choosing to continue in the next step, that I empower each and every one of you with a baton right now to invite either your significant other or a woman who's in resonance. It's not locally right here. It's non-local, to be a part of a next action planning or action meeting or assemblage point, so that we have the feminine,
Yeah.
the sister, the beloved, the voice.
I believe we should replicate this very event
So
in
the
this location with
invitation-
6 women.
Yeah, invitation right now, the next action, if we are going to continue to do this again, that we bring in that dialogue.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Love
Does
being with you.
does everyone feel consensus with
Really-
that as an action step?
Yeah.
Simple action step?
Love it.
Okay.
I mean,
All right.
Love it.
Right.
All right, boys.
Boom.
Woo! Round table.
any spiritual closing miracle?
Some sound was really good. Unite
no.
us.
Well, I mean, we could do a Hawaiian closing. That's really easy. We have to stand up.
Stay on good. That's the deal.
Yeah.
In the yoga shala.
This is okay.
That's fine. We just put it right here. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna squeeze the hand 3 times so we're connected somatically. And then what we're gonna do is we do 3 rounds of Ao, Mau, Mau, Anu, Noa. Okay? So it's 3 claps. So 3 represents feminine, masculine, child, the trilogy. And then you send it out. So we do that 3 times and then we close. Okay?
Ao Mao now.
Ao, Mau, Mau, Anu, Noa. And what that means is the kapu, okay, that which has been secret or within this container, which has been forbidden to anyone else because we had a closed circle, is now free, and we're sending it out to the 10 directions and 4 corners of the planet, so that it may ripple like a pebble in the pond. So that's the intention of this particular Hawaiian chant, which basically releases the kapu. Okay, so we've all held this sacred container as brothers, and now we're releasing it so that it can, ripple and affect whoever it needs to ripple, whether it's these cameras, through our voices, through our demeanors, through our stories, our narratives, whatever we share. Okay? All right, so let's rub our hands. Here we go. And let's just ask the ancestors here of this Savannah place and all the indigenous beings, from the Heavenly Father sky to the earth Pachamama Mother, And we're just going to send this prayer out, everything that we've seeded today and shared, may benefit all beings. Okay, so we start here and clap 3 times. How, Anu Noah. How, Anu Noah. How, Anu Noah. Ke pono e malio mai u kai kane e kua loho e kia pono e mai kai I ke aloha muha hiki e o. Ke aloha e. Ke aloha e. Ke aloha e. Take a deep breath in. Fill the belly up. Feel the mana. Breathe it in. Hold the breath. Bring it to your dantian, to your heart. Hold the breath. Feel the energy circumambulate through your whole body. Retain the breath. Bring your hands to your heart. And I want you to just bring all that energy, and we're just going to do a large ha to the center of the earth. You can even come down to the ground. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Just ground it in the center of this beautiful blue-green spinning planet that we all call home. This beautiful mother built us all. And just your children. That's it. Thanks to Mother Earth, man. It's gonna be hard. Mahalo kea kua, brothers.